and made his face turn blue. Well, I got nothing against the press. They wouldn't print it if it wasn't true. If you wanna know about the Mad Pop Rockers, if you wanna know how to play guitar, if you wanna know about any other suckers, you can read it in the Sunday papers. Sunday papers. Sunday paper, there's no question. Sunday paper, there's no time. just to fit the mold that I am in. But things just get so crazy, living life gets hard to do. And I would gladly hit the road, get up and go if I knew that someday it would lead me back to you. That someday it would lead me back to you. That maybe all I need. And I
Broadcasting live from Washington, D.C., this is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Left with me, Danielle, and Shano, your weekly, proudly liberal alternative to the Sunday morning corporate news. Good morning, Shano.
Good morning. You hear yourself all right in your headphones?
I do not really hear myself or you in my headphones, but thankfully, Shano is working that out.
Do you now?
I do. Thank you.
No problem.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for checking us out wherever you may be listening. Sorry for our being away, but thank you for hanging out with us, whether you're listening on SoFlo Radio, We Act Radio, 1480 AM in D.C., or come and hanging out in the chat room with us over at TalkingLeft.com.
And we'll do a tech update.
Yes.
We won't start the show with that, though.
No. But the technical reasons as to why we were away and all new stuff in the studio, we'll tell you about it in a little while.
Or you may find out for yourself when it all blows up.
That could happen.
So hang on to your seats. You never know what's going to happen
yes,
today.
It certainly could happen. But as usual, we like to start off the show with stories that either you may have missed or we think need more attention. And the first one, I have to say, got me a little frustrated, Shane.
Oh, great. Great way to start the new year. Thanks, Danielle.
Yeah, you're welcome. While everybody was paying attention to Chris Christie and Bridgegate, which we'll talk about a little bit, but we're not going to get into on the level...
Bridgegate just bothers me all on its own.
Gate.
Sometimes bridges are gates.
Yeah.
Gate, Bridgegate, gate.
Yeah. Well, while everybody was focused on that, the U.S. Senate, or certain members... went ahead with trying to fast-track the Trans-Pacific Partnership and other trade agreements. And I
Sleight of hand.
Yeah.
You know, you make a lot of gestures over here and no one's looking as you're palming the entire world's economy over here.
Right. The TPP, as everybody knows about, would make up about 40% of the entire world GDP. The two...
what could possibly go wrong?
Right.
Consolidating that much power in one place.
If you add that with another trade deal that's being proposed with the European Union, it represents 2/3 of the global economy.
See, gerrymandering all the dollars.
Yes.
All the assets, all the wealth.
Yes. And
Divvying it up, the masters of the universe, and then the rest of us.
Right. But I this just made me furious, and this is not...
But what was the result? Did it fast track?
Well, they just proposed the legislation to fast track it.
Right.
But
That's when we chime in.
Right, but it has bipartisan support. Obviously there are some great members of Congress that are standing up against this and trying to fight it. Bernie Sanders, Sherrod Brown, Alan Grayson, etc. But the Democrats are going right along with this, and it's really upsetting. Granted, they are...
When it's so rare that you have someone in power who's willing to relinquish power. And when the Congress, if they were to do this, they would be saying, we're going to give up some of our power.
Right.
We're going to say, we're going to give up the power to when the TPP comes to us, to read it, not to read it, I'm sorry, but to say, we want this change or we want that change. We want to amend it this way, that way. Or even stronger, we'd like to have a higher threshold. We'd like a 60-vote majority because this is a big darn deal.
Right.
And we want to make sure that it's really bipartisan.
Right. And
they're giving up all of that. They're saying,
sorry.
we're going to do it. We're not going to be able to amend it. We're not, we can discuss it and then it's up or down. Yes or no?
Right. And I'm sorry, you have Democrats right now fighting to restore unemployment benefits, as they should. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not going to mean diddly if the TPP goes through. No. Unemployment benefits are going to be the least of our worries when the rest of our jobs are going over to other countries because we can't compete with people who make 75 cents an hour.
It is completely antithetical to raising the minimum wage.
Yes.
The TPP is. Because when you have these gigantic multinational trade agreements, all of our workers in this country, of course, are competing with all of the workers in those other countries.
Right. I mean, you think just one of the nations in the TPP, Vietnam, their hourly wage on average is 75 cents an hour.
And their minimum is 28, I think, somewhere in there. The minimum wage of Vietnam.
Right.
So And that
cents, 28 cents.
Now, someone who is in Congress who says, I don't believe in the minimum wage, we should just let the market direct it. I understand why they could then vote for the TPP, but I don't understand how you can have a senator or congressperson who says, I want to raise the minimum wage, and at the same time, I'm going to vote to fast track the TPP. Because if you take those two votes, they are completely the antithesis of one another.
Right.
They're contradictory, and don't do it.
Right, but you have Max Baucus himself saying, quote, the
Max Baucus is on his way out, and he's waiting for a big corporate job.
Obviously. That's obviously who he's appealing to here, because this fast track bill is called the Trade Promotion Authority proposal, the TPA, not to be confused with the TPP. But his quote,
all TP.
Yeah, the TPA legislation that we are introducing today will make sure that these trade deals get done and get done right. Well, if you want them to get done and get done right, why not let Congress debate them and alter them as the American people would like?
And at the same time, when he says get done right, in that statement, he's saying that whomever's negotiating this behind closed doors is doing it correctly.
But
and
we don't know.
We don't want any oversight. And even if it isn't done correctly, we're not going to be able to debate and amend it.
Right.
It makes that statement is phooey.
Yeah. So if that didn't get you fired up at the beginning of the show,
did.
Yeah, I
I'm
thought
ready
that
to
might. I always like to try and switch off to some good news, and this is
I
semi.
put me into a political seizure this morning, back and forth.
This is semi good news. The EPA is going to require that some fracking companies have to actually disclose their fracking chemicals. And this is a big deal because up until now, most people might not understand this, but fracking companies are protected by the Clean Water Act, right?
Yeah, they were exempted during the Bush administration. This was a big Cheney giveaway that they're not even under this. So, and on top of it, when we found out that there's some pretty nasty chemicals in this water they flush down to break up the rocks. And we said, well, we'd like to know what those are, what you're jamming into our ground.
Nope.
And they
Not
said, well,
gonna tell you.
that's a trade secret.
Right.
If we let you know
Proprietary information.
If we let you know that, then our competitors will know that, all two of them probably.
Right.
So therefore, for business purposes, because we need to protect businesses, we can't disclose this, not even in camera, not even behind closed doors, because
Right.
it'll get leaked out.
Well,
Pun intended.
The EPA has had a lot of trouble getting fracking companies to disclose this. Some states have done a better job of
Sure.
trying to get that information. But anytime the federal government has gone after them, they claim proprietary information.
Right.
However, I didn't even know that fracking occurred in the open ocean. But it does.
Okay.
Along the coast of California, in federal ocean waters, there have been over 200 fracking wells drilled. Well, when those fracking companies drill the wells in the ocean along the coast of California and they're finally, done, they bring those chemicals up, they just dump them back into the ocean.
Oh, what could possibly go wrong there?
Right, exactly.
Well, they figure there's enough radiation in it from Fukushima. What the hell?
Yeah, perhaps that's it. But yes, they've had more than 200 wells drilled off the coast.
But the good news is,
thank you, you brought me back. The EPA is saying that you need that fracking companies are going to have to disclose the chemical contents
because
of those
they have
fracking
authority
fluids.
over that
Right.
water, that's federal land and or federal waters.
Right.
So, and you say, well, it's only the federal land. What about the other ones? Well, the thing is that I doubt that they have a special formula just for federal lands.
Right.
Well, they may. Who knows? They have special book counting for IRS, but at least we'll know some of the things that are in there, if not all of them.
Well, the
And
thing
I'm sure
is,
they're suing over this, right?
yes. Well, not yet, but I'm sure they will. The Center of Biological Diversity estimates that about 1/3 of the chemicals used are already listed by the government as ecological hazards. So although the EPA isn't going far enough here, they're not banning fracking in federal waters. They're not banning fracking, period. They're not making all fracking companies disclose this information. I think it's a really good step because...
Right. You find out what's in it, and then you say, wait a minute, because of what's in it, you can't use that, or you're not going to be able to frack.
Right.
You
And
kind of
if-
say, the benefits are outweighed by the negatives of dumping this stuff into the ocean. So therefore, come up with a better way or don't do it.
Right.
And then the next step is, and the next step, and next step, and next
Right.
step.
When the
because you
public-
have to undo what the Bush administration and the Cheney administration essentially put in as complete carte blanche for these people.
Right. But when the public as a whole and when environmental groups and agencies find out, hey, they really are using these toxic chemicals, it's a logical next step to say, well, are you using these chemicals in other fracking processes?
And it also will give some standing to some individual environmental groups to bring lawsuits on behalf of the people in the areas.
As well as hopefully some legal standing for individuals and groups who have tried to sue over fracking water contaminating their groundwater and their land. So
essentially, and then they go into discovery where you find out information from the other side, and they say, well, we can't tell you because it's a trade
right,
secret.
But the EPA is saying it ain't a trade secret anymore. You want to dump it in the ocean, you're going to tell us what it is.
And by extension, you're going to be telling all of those plaintiffs.
Right. So hopefully it leads to more restrictive policies.
More information is always better.
Right.
Period.
I'll take the small victory.
Sure.
Back to some frustrating news.
Okay.
There's been so much talk about the war on the poor and war on poverty this week. And one of the major reasons that poverty has become such a big issue is the decline of unions. That people don't have representation in the workforce. Well, one of the biggest anti-labor laws that's happened across several states is these so-called right-to-work laws that I call right to work for nothing. Coming from Florida.
Right to fire.
Right.
Right to fire at will.
Well, Republicans in Missouri are once again pushing to pass right-to-work legislation. They've already tried this unsuccessfully, and Governor Jay Nixon, who is a Democrat, promised to veto any new right-to-work bills that they put forward. But they're just going right ahead with it. First bill of the new year in Missouri. That's what they push forward. People are still suffering without unemployment benefits. Lots of people need jobs. You have, healthcare issues going on. There's tons of pieces of legislation they could have put forward. But what's the first thing they try? Attack the unions.
Well, there is a Supreme Court case coming up, and this is being reported by Reuters and Independent News.
Right.
Harris versus Quinn. I think it's actually up. The argument is actually in the next couple of weeks. That if the Supreme Court were to go as far as they can go, and they often do when they're being activists, it could make every state in this union right to work for less immediately. I mean, this is a big deal.
Yes. I mean, even Republicans in Missouri have been on the fence. And, most Republicans are always pushing for right to work for less. But like President Pro Temp Tom Dempsey said he was hesitant to get behind this legislation, obviously because of the outpouring of people standing against it in other states where it's passed. But the corporate masters are pushing hard for it. And it's something that I really hope people in Missouri are watching and fighting, and that they support their governor who wants to veto this legislation.
Yeah, reading from the Workers Independent News here. The conservative Supreme Court could go further, according to Professor Sachs, and rule that it's unconstitutional in the public sector to require union dues for collective bargaining. That, Professor Sachs says, could convert all public employees nationwide to the so-called right-to-work legal status. So this is a case to watch out for. It's one that Ian Millhiser alerted us to before the Supreme Court's term. So,
and have they already heard arguments in that case?
No, it's coming up. But it's one to keep an eye on.
It's one you'll be telling us more about as those arguments.
Or we can get the man himself, Ian Millhiser.
All right, the man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah. You thought I was going to say Chief Justice John Roberts, but no, the man, the myth is actually.
You book John Roberts. You let me know.
I'll let you know. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
We might tweet that out.
Okay. In some good news, though, back to good news. Always like to, you got to have a little sugar with your vinegar. Moral Mondays is coming to Georgia. This, I think, is really awesome news. I know we saw these Moral Monday protests in North Carolina just, explode with outpourings of support and publicity and
well, what they were doing in North Carolina is crazy.
Right. Well, what they're doing in a lot of states is crazy.
Of course. But
Moral Mondays, let's face it, in North Carolina, there were still a lot of really horrible policies enacted and left in place. But
there's an election coming.
And those protests allow people to know that they're not alone in their frustration. And those
who aren't paying attention, let them know what's going on.
Right. And those protests are coming to Georgia. A new group, Moral Mondays Georgia, describes themselves as a multiracial, multi-issue coalition of citizens working for positive change for the public good. Great statement. They are very frustrated because Georgia is one of the states that refused to expand Medicaid. They have also, like North Carolina, passed really restrictive steal the vote laws. And they have diverted, this is something we've seen going on in so many states, so much of the public education funding to these for-profit private charter schools. And people in Georgia are TO'd. They, they want some representation that actually enacts policies that benefit them and their state.
It's interesting. And I just thought of this, but it used to be that there were national policies and national marches, marches on the wall, on the mall, marches on Washington. But as conservatives have taken their fight more locally, now the marches have become Georgia, North Carolina, and it's a reaction to that conservative operation of not doing things necessarily on the presidential level, but doing things at the State House.
Right.
And it's great that people are getting out there because what happens at the State House oftentimes affects people more directly.
Well, but if you think about some of the last, the most recent progressive movements, think about Occupy. It started in one or two cities. It started on Wall Street, and it spread nationally. You saw the Fight for 15 and the fast food worker strike start in New York and grow nationally to the point where it had a national...
I would argue that those are national movements.
Right, but
I think these moral...
Why can't we get to a National Moral Monday?
We can, but what each Moral Monday is protesting is what the State House is doing.
Right.
Occupy was protesting a national type of thing, bailing out banks. The Fight for 15 is asking for a national federal minimum wage. Those are national issues, and they're important. I'm not saying any are less or more important than the others, but the Moral Monday is a direct reaction to conservative overreach in state houses. And,
right.
And you could argue in Wisconsin also.
But there is conservative overreach nationally.
Of course.
I think
what I'm saying is before these Moral Mondays, I'm not trying to pick a fight with you. What I'm saying is we didn't have these statewide protests. What I'm saying, usually they were national protests, protesting a national policy because that's when you get the most people involved, and that's when the press shows up.
Right.
It's hard to do this at the state level, and it's great that they are.
I think it's great. I think there should be Moral Mondays in every state. And
that doesn't make it a national movement, by the way. That makes it 50 state movements.
Okay, thank you.
Harumph.
I knew that one was coming. Yeah. And just a last quick one before we have to run to a break. California, one of the states that also has really fought against the fracking companies, but now California is also fighting against the NSA. And this is a state-by-state way I think we could actually take on the NSA. A bipartisan duo, State Senator Ted Lieu and State Senator Joel Anderson have introduced the Fourth Amendment Protection Act, which prohibits the state of California from aiding the NSA in any way.
It's amazing that you would need such an act.
Yes.
Considering the Fourth Amendment is supreme.
Right. The bill says that state and local agencies would not be able to provide any material support to the NSA. It would block public universities from serving as NSA research facilities. It would provide sanctions against corporations that attempt to come in and fill the needs not met by state government. And it would ban the state and local law enforcement agencies from sharing any of your private information with the NSA.
Without a warrant.
Without a warrant, of course.
So, because people say, oh my gosh, they're going to get blown up by terrorists now. No, it's just we're going back to the Fourth Amendment again.
Only in Bill O'Reilly's wet dream.
Well, he actually did call for blowing up the Coit Towers.
Yes, but you think, the NSA is not in California. It's in Utah. That's the closest state. But they want to enact this measure before it slips across the border and they start building research facilities.
How do they know?
Right. Honestly. I mean physical location.
How do they know?
Well, anyhow,
there's a lot of military bases.
I think this is a great bill. Right now it's in committee and it would still have to be approved by the full state Senate.
We drive by the NSA all the time.
We do. We drive by the NSA and we make offensive hand gestures.
We wave
in
a special way.
Special way.
We wave in a special way. It's right at 495 here.
So just imagine if we did that state by state, say no state could provide any assistance to the NSA. Could help a lot. Just saying.
No.
Anyhow, we've got a great show. David Bender, Sam Sachs, Nicole Flato of Think Progress, and Justin Duckham of the Talk Radio News Service all coming up today. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we will be back with more. So stick around.
A beautiful place full of wonderful things just waiting to be experienced.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
What if I told you that you could reverse diabetes and stop taking your diabetes medication? If you or someone you care about has diabetes or pre-diabetes, there is a special free video you need to watch. You may have heard about this. It's all over the internet. 33diabetic.com. People who have followed this plan at 33diabetic.com have not only normalized their blood sugar, but have stopped taking their diabetes meds completely with their doctor's approval. 33diabetic.com is a natural drug-free approach to reversing diabetes with remarkable results in as little as 4 weeks. 33diabetic.com will save you from being a slave to doctor-prescribed drugs. In this video, 33diabetic.com gives you 3 specific actions to get your blood sugar under control. And the best part is the main ingredient and solution is a common spice found in most kitchens. Watch the free video for yourself at 33diabetic.com. Watch for free at 33diabetic.com. Get back the quality of your life and free yourself from diabetes meds. Go to 33diabetic.com.
It's football season at Buffalo Wild Wings, and there's no other place that packs in the action like we do. When there's a timeout during a game, you're watching another game. And when you're not watching that game, you're watching another game. With over 50 big screens, your eyes won't miss any of the action. And neither will your taste buds. You'll enjoy hand-spun wings and 16 signature sauces and 5 seasonings, ultimate nachos, burgers, and over 20 beers on draft. Maybe action-packed is a bit of an understatement.
Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports.
In 1942, Eleanor flipped her wig about Geico saving her moolah on her motor insurance.
Hey man, in 1969, Ace saved enough dough with Geico to go to Woodstock. His only memory? The savings.
In 1984, Stephanie saved, majorly on her car insurance with Geico. It was so totally righteous.
Over the past 75 years, the expressions have changed, but one thing hasn't. Saving money with Geico.
This is the Media Matters Minute. I'm Coleman Lowndes. Fox News can't seem to talk about the Chris Christie bridge closure scandal without invoking Benghazi. Fox and Friends devoted 5 segments to the story Friday morning and somehow managed to bring up the September 2012 Benghazi attacks in each segment. But it wasn't just Fox. Here's Rush Limbaugh on Thursday.
We're spending now an hour press conference on lane closures on the George Washington Bridge. We haven't spent this much time in a press conference on 4 Americans dying in Benghazi.
And Laura Ingraham.
Why would we even comment about this Chris Christie issue? To even go on and on about this story, raising other issues, when we have 4 Americans dead in Benghazi after the administration said, well, basically, what does it matter?
Media Matters has crafted a how-to checklist for conservative media covering the scandal. To check it out, please visit MediaMatters.org.
Filter-free radio.
Filter-free radio.
Filter-free radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean.
With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
If you look around with peak oil, with climate change, with all the natural disasters.
Writings on the wall.
Yeah, they know. They know better than even you and I know what the worst-case scenario is. And so they're preparing for it. Rather than responding rationally, the power elites will not respond rationally to the climate catastrophe is one of the most daunting challenges we have to grasp, because it's up to us. They will do whatever they can to protect themselves, and they don't represent us. And it's the whole co-opting of, oh, you two can be rich if you just work hard enough. Well, we're not going to be rich. You never can be rich. Even if you did become rich, you won't ever be wealthy. And wealth is something totally different.
Filter-free radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
And wealthy is what controls a society. It controls the world. And so we have to bring pressure to bear on the wealthy.
Yeah.
And then you start talking about, how do we do that? Well, you shut down their systems of power. You stop giving them money. You force them to listen.
Filterfreeradio.com.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. And thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for everybody who stuck with us while we were off for a couple weeks.
2
weeks.
That's a long time for us.
It is.
We take them off, kind of try to do once a month, once every 6 weeks or so. But.
Yes, because otherwise we have no days off. But we got some new hardware, a new computer.
Yeah.
A computer. Fancy
and we got rid of the one that makes all the darn noise, which is good. And then this one, the Stormtrooper here.
Yes.
I mean, seriously, it was a gift for Christmas. It looks like a Stormtrooper from Star Wars.
Yes.
And it's doing the work of 2 computers.
Yeah.
It's doing the work of 2 computers.
I think it could run the space station. I'm just saying.
Well, it could have run the space station in the 70s, that's for sure. But and you remember that there were some issues with clips not playing and getting hitchy and things like that, and that doesn't happen anymore. So, and all new software too.
Yes.
Free, by the way. Anyone who, because I know we have a lot of people who listen who are fellow podcasters, radio DJs, open source, free software, and it works great.
Yes.
If you were an organized person, especially because you label all your stuff, it rotates. It's really cool.
It's very cool.
I highly recommend it.
So before the break, that last story we did in the news was about California taking on the NSA.
Yeah.
And since Edward Snowden blew the whistle on the NSA, we keep hearing this talking point. We've even heard it from the president, that metadata isn't intrusive. It's not like we're listening to your phone calls. It's not like we're reading your emails. We're just jotting down some numbers, right? That's pretty much what we've heard.
Well, because there was a case back some years ago. I can't remember the name of it right now. I think Marshall something or other, in which the spies looked at one person's metadata. The Supreme Court says you don't have an expectation of privacy in that. Then we figured, well, let's do that for 40 million people. And that's what they're counting on, saying, well, it's such a small intrusion into every single person's life. There's that balancing test that the search is not unreasonable under the Fourth Amendment, and therefore we don't need a darn warrant.
Right.
That's the thought process, to the extent there is one.
Well, we now have proof, and you can even see for yourself with your own personal data.
Oh, goody. That
is not the case. There is a great article about this over on Common Dreams, and it has all the links that I'm referencing here. Two MIT students, smart guys. I'm not going to try and pronounce their names. I'm sorry, gentlemen, if you happen to, on this strange off chance, hear this.
They're too busy.
Two very brilliant gentlemen developed a program called the Immersion Program. And it takes just a portion of the so-called metadata that the NSA would have access to. You can give them access to the time and date stamps in your email, the to and CC fields. That's it.
Okay.
Doesn't sound like a lot.
When you emailed into whom?
Right.
That's it.
Exactly. And with that information, they can give you back graphs and charts showing all kinds of detailed information about your life. So detailed, in fact, that Cade Crockford, the person who wrote this Common Dreams article, says you may actually learn something about yourself.
They know more about you than
Yes.
you know about yourself.
The program can likely return things like your former love life, your former partners, spouses, changing dynamics in your personal, professional network, whether you changed jobs, got a promotion, made new friends, etc. Deaths, transitions in your life, if you got married, if somebody passed away, all kinds of personal information. And you can actually go and use this information, use this program. Go over to Common Dreams, look for this article, think metadata isn't intrusive, read this. And you can click on this link and give them access to your email. They promise they will actually delete it after showing you what type of personal information is there.
Except for the fact that the NSA has tapped them.
Right. The NSA is like, thanks, you're doing the work for us, man.
We usually have to pay subcontractors for this work.
But they wanted to show how invasive this information really is, and think this is just a portion of it. This doesn't include your phone data.
That is so tiny.
Right. This doesn't include your phone data. It doesn't include your internet usage.
Your search history.
Right.
Yeah.
But they wanted to make the point that this is private information, and it should be private.
Also, it's not even that. It's that some people's reaction was, oh, so what?
Right.
Oh, so what? And because we've had a steady deterioration of our expectations of privacy.
Right.
And if you don't have an expectation of privacy, they're not going to protect it. The Fourth Amendment only applies if there's an expectation of privacy. So they've been driving it down with people like Scalia who say, well, if you aren't doing anything wrong, then why do you care if anyone's listening?
Well, you can go and see for yourself. You might not be doing anything wrong, but you can go and look at this program, see what information about you is being given over without a warrant.
Right. And then foster that expectation. I'd like this private. Thank you very much.
Right. So I think it's very important that we check this out. You can get it over at Common Dreams. The program is called the Immersion Program, IMMERSION. You could probably Google it. and find out. But the NSA will have record of that search. Just saying.
All right.
So anyhow, we do have to run to a break. We're going to come back with David Bender, the political director of Progressive Voices, and he's going to tell us all about the Senate races we need to watch for. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we'll be back with David Bender, so stick around.
It reflects the drama of the human experience, and isn't that the essence of art?
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
In the ever-escalating competition to be the #1 big-time college football program in the nation, Ohio State University bulked up last fall with a monster recruit named Max. Actually, it's not the coaching staff that signed up this brute, but the OSU campus police department. And the recruit's full name is Max Pro. Not a football player, but a 19-ton armored fighting vehicle built by a Pentagon contractor to withstand, quote, ballistic arms fire, minefields, IEDs, and nuclear, biological, and chemical environments. Wow, college games really have gotten rough. But the campus PD, which received the Max Pro as a gift from the Pentagon, i.e. us taxpayers, says it's not just playing games. Max is available for big actions, like hostage scenarios, killers loose on campus, and extreme flooding of up to 3 feet. Well, have such things been a problem at OSU? No. Would a huge, slow, gas-guzzling vehicle designed for warfare be effective if any of the above were actually to occur? No one in the department wanted to tackle that question. Oh, by the way, operating and maintaining these machines requires specially trained and licensed personnel. Are any of OSU's officers qualified? Again, no answer from headquarters. Also, the vehicles are subject to frequent rollovers, and they lack the ability to go off-road or to maneuver in confined areas. That doesn't sound ideal for a college campus. But the gendarmes say they've adjusted Max to fit their needs. How? By removing the gun turret and repainting the vehicle. This is Jim Hightower saying OSU police finally admitted that Max's chief role would be to provide a police presence on football game days. Great. Police authorities now believe they need a show of military force to keep tailgaters in check.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham.
According to a new poll from Quinnipiac University, Americans support raising the minimum wage by 71 to 27%. The poll also finds Americans support extending unemployment benefits by 58 to 37%. 51% of people polled think the minimum wage should be raised to $10.10 an hour or higher. Consideration is underway in the U.S. Senate right now to extend jobless benefits by 3 months. A New Americans United for Change national ad features some workers who are losing their unemployment benefits.
I lost my job probably about 6-7 months ago.
I'm a year short of being qualifying for my retirement.
They had some cutbacks. I was the most skilled technician and also the highest paid. My retirement is going away as a result of this.
I do have a husband, thank God, or I would be homeless.
Tell Republicans, restore unemployment benefits now.
I was completely blown away by how many signatures we've gotten.
A Change.org petition launched by an anonymous Staples worker has gathered more than 166,000 signatures calling on Staples to stop dodging legal requirements of the Affordable Care Act by cutting part-time hours of its workers. A worker using the pseudonym Sue Whistleblower worked for years between 30 and 35 hours a week at Staples, but starting last month, Sue and other Staples workers had their hours cut back to just 25 hours a week with no exceptions. Sue Sue believes that Staples did it to avoid having to provide health insurance coverage to the workers under the Affordable Care Act.
I just want to thank the folks that have signed our petition at change.org. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. This is definitely sending a clear message that Staples and other companies like this cannot abuse their workers and abuse loopholes just because they can and just to save money. And hopefully we will send a clear message. If they abuse their employees, people will take their money elsewhere.
Sue says the Affordable Care Act is working, despite efforts by Staples and others to sabotage it.
As convoluted as the process was, it worked. And I'm hoping to get my new insurance cards here shortly.
Public employees in New York City are entering new contract talks, feeling no longer demonized by the mayor. New Mayor Bill de Blasio is perceived as being much more worker-friendly than multi-billionaire Mike Bloomberg was. The unions in New York City say that a whole different tone is being set by the new mayor. The unions told New York City's labor press that the union-city relationship is going to be reset based on honesty, respect, and a shared commitment to making the city work. The 300,000 New York City public workers haven't had raises in years. The unions estimate city workers have lost a combined total of $6 to $7 billion. Nobody is expecting the contract talks to be easy, but the unions believe that the new de Blasio administration will be an effective and progressive one that respects workers. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we are very excited to be speaking with our friend, the brilliant, the one and only political director of Progressive Voices, David Bender, the knower and predictor of all things politics, because every time you've said something, David, on this show, it has become, it has come to play out as correct. So hopefully everything that you're going to tell us tonight is going to be in our favor. But thank you very much for joining us.
Better than ever. Stay tuned for
It's always a pleasure, and that is an awesome burden. I'd like to tell you that there will be $1 billion in your studio as soon as we are done with this segment, but that might break my string. So on the other hand, we could, begin working with the Koch brothers, at which point some of the money they're pouring into the Senate races could come right to Progressive Voices. Why not?
Hey.
Let's get on the gravy train.
Stranger things have happened, or so I've been told.
Yes, they have.
Yes, I wanted to get your take on Senate races. It is an election year, and I know that it's January, and people are probably going, "Oh my God, don't start this yet." That they don't want to hear about elections yet. But the fact is, we need to think in the long game, like Republicans do, and we need to know where to spend our energy, our time, and for those who have the means, our money in Senate races in 2014.
Danielle, millions of dollars, just for the record here, millions of dollars in what would be called dark money in the nomenclature now in politics. The C4 money, a lot of it, Koch brothers money, has already been spent. Yeah. It was spent in 2013. So if anyone thinks that we are, it's too early to get started, they haven't been paying attention to what's going on the ground in places like North Carolina, where Democratic incumbent Kay Hagan has been, roundly attacked for months. And this is a very, very tough situation. This is very similar to the situation the Democrats found themselves in previously, defending more seats. It's the luck of the draw. Right. Third of the Senate is up every 2 years. And what we're seeing now is 21 Democratic seats up and only 14 Republican seats up. And many of those are untouchable red states. So the Republicans really are all about offense, and the Democrats at this point are playing defense in some cases in places like West Virginia and South Dakota, where it's all but written off nationally. We know that some seats with retirements, like Tim Johnson in South Dakota,
right.
Jay Rockefeller in West Virginia, those are probably not competitive seats. So those seats are gone. Republicans need to pick up 6 to make Mitch McConnell, if he survives, the majority leader.
And there's a scary 6 on the chopping block. As you mentioned, Kay Hagan in North Carolina, also Mary Landrieu, and then 4 retirements. Iowa, Tom Harkin, Max Baucus, Jay Rockefeller, and Tim Johnson all retiring. I mean, that's 6 seats right there that could swing their way.
That's right. And you've got also Mark Begich in Alaska, who is vulnerable in a very red state, a Democratic incumbent. They're trying to put some other states in play. There's even the notion that we will have our poster child, literally, the former centerfold model, Scott Brown.
That's right.
Moving from Massachusetts to New Hampshire to run against James Shaheen. If you're looking for little clues, I think in whatever social network he used to identify himself as Scott Brown from Massachusetts, he has now dropped the Massachusetts from his self-identification. Are we going to see a New Hampshire there very soon? It's possible. There's a lot of pressure on him to get into that race.
Now, what do you think Republicans are going to run on this year? I mean, we've already seen the House come out with the Obamacare legislature. Is this going to be another year of the entire Republican Party simply attacking the president and not offering any real solutions?
That's what they think will work. I think it is Obamacare throughout, and that's speaking today in January. That's their strategy today. What we don't know, and realize here's the problem. Remember, a lot of these states where Democrats are on the ballot, their states opted out, didn't participate. So you have a state like Louisiana, you mentioned Mary Landrieu, where Governor Jindal did not participate in Obamacare. We have half the states not agreeing to expand Medicaid. And with that, you don't have the chance for a Democrat to run on the success of the program in his or her state because they didn't get to see it. They're not going to see many of the benefits that places like California and New York, which immediately cooperated, will have. So it's a double whammy. They get to attack Obamacare and not have participated in it, so the voters and their electorate will not see how well it can work.
Now, is there the opportunity for senators like Mary Landrieu to point to these other states that accepted Medicare and expanded Medicaid, to say, this is why we need a Democrat in office, to say you're not getting health care because of Republicans? I mean, we can say it's playing politics, we can say it's the party line nonsense, but it's absolutely the truth.
The answer to your question is yes, yes, and yes, and Mary Landrieu is a very good politician, is already doing that. She knows the numbers. There are 200,000 to 300,000 residents of Louisiana who are not getting health care that they could have if Governor Jindal had opted in. She is identifying them. She's targeting this. She's very smart at this. I don't agree with her always. She is, we have a situation where, for example, there are only 2 Republican seats that I would encourage people to watch, and the only place I encourage people, specifically, this is me, David Bender, now talking, to really be involved. If you can, if you don't live in the state but can somehow, send a contribution, Allison Lundergan Grimes, who's running against Mitch McConnell, has a real chance to beat Mitch McConnell in Kentucky. And that is where I would encourage progressives to put their efforts into her candidacy. I was about to mention Michelle Nunn, the daughter of former Senator Sam Nunn, a Democrat in Georgia. There's a chance that Democrats can take that seat. That's going to be harder, but it's possible. But of course, the only other name I want to mention, so I'm encouraging people to support Allison Lundergan Grimes in Kentucky to beat Mitch McConnell and to support the re-election of our friend and great progressive Al Franken in Minnesota.
Yes, absolutely. That should go without saying to anybody listening to Talking Left, Progressive Voices, or any of the great progressive outlets. Just want to remind everybody we're speaking with David Bender, the political director of Progressive Voices. You can check it out at progressivevoices.com, and of course listen to Progressive Voices on the TuneIn app. I hate to make too big or put you in the spot for big predictions, but what do you think is the most likely outcome here? I mean, 6 questionable seats for Democrats, 2 that we'll hopefully pick up for, from Republicans. that's still a worrisome balance for me.
It's very tough. And Danielle, honestly, this is the same situation that Democrats faced last time around. When you see, when we saw what happened when Republicans imploded and put up candidates like Christine O'Donnell, which is they had a sure win in Delaware with their congressman, but he lost to a Tea Party challenger. The same thing happened with Harry Reid. Harry Reid should have lost, but the Republicans, the Tea Party faction, imploded. So what we have to look at here is how much division, and there are still fights still going on, Republican primaries across the country. Even people like John Cornyn getting challenged. Lindsey Graham has challengers. There could be some surprises. So I am not going to go out on that limb that I would be sawing out from under myself right now with a prediction of how it's going to turn out. But I'll tell you this. There are surprises yet to come. Let's watch carefully to see if Scott Brown gets in, because that'll make that race competitive in New Hampshire. And let's see if some of these Tea Party people upset people like Lindsey Graham or even John Cornyn. Less likely, but possible.
I think there are definitely things to watch for. Any thoughts, of course, on Liz Cheney dropping out of the Senate race?
I'm reminded of that song from The Sound of Music. So long, farewell, Auf Wiedersehen, goodbye. Liz Cheney was ill-advised to claim that she lived in Wyoming. She'd never had residence there. She tried to claim it when she went out to get a fishing license. It was ridiculous. It was laughable. It was the kind of hubris that runs in that family. The same hubris that guided Dick Cheney's entire political career. Apparently that gene has been passed down to his daughter, and the voters in Wyoming, even Republican voters, were not buying it.
Well, at some point, you can't fool even the foolish. So we do have to run to a quick break, but David, will you hopefully stay around with us for one more segment?
It would be my pleasure. We haven't talked about Chris Christie.
I know. I was saving the fun for last. We will be right back here on Talking Left with even more David Bender. You're listening to me, Danielle, and Shano. Stick around.
Hey, it's Hal Sparks from the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide, and this is Talking Left.
What if I told you that you could reverse diabetes and stop taking your diabetes medication? If you or someone you care about has diabetes or pre-diabetes, there is a special free video you need to watch. You may have heard about this. It's all over the internet. 33diabetic.com. People who have followed this plan at 33diabetic.com have not only normalized their blood sugar, but have stopped taking their diabetes meds completely with their doctor's approval. 33diabetic.com is a natural, drug-free approach to reversing diabetes with remarkable results in as little as 4 weeks. 33diabetic.com will save you from being a slave to doctor-prescribed drugs. In this video, 33diabetic.com gives you 3 specific actions to get your blood sugar under control. And the best part is the main ingredient and solution is a common spice found in most kitchens. Watch the free video for yourself at 33diabetic.com. Watch for free at 33diabetic.com. Get back the quality of your life and free yourself from diabetes meds. Go to 33diabetic.com.
I need to control internet usage in my office.
Do you want to pay a fee for every user?
No.
Do you want to pay extra to protect remote users?
No.
How about a product that's difficult to install and use?
No.
Offshore or automated phone tree support okay?
No.
Then yes, we can help.
The Barracuda Web Filter. Content filtering, application control, and malware protection with no per-user fees. Available as a hardware appliance, virtual appliance, or as a cloud service. And live humans to answer your calls. Try Barracuda Web Filter free. Go to barracuda.com/yes.
Not every great sports moment happens during primetime. At Buffalo Wild Wings, we reward those diehard fans who stay up to catch it all by keeping our kitchen open late. Everything from wings to burgers and nachos. Whether it's an East Coast crowd catching the end of a West Coast game or a life-changing triple overtime thriller, we're there with you until the end with hand-spun wings in one of our 16 signature sauces and 5 seasonings and 20-plus beers on tap. Great things happen at night, especially here.
Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports.
This is the Media Matters Minute. I'm John Kerr. On America's Newsroom, Fox News contributor Karl Rove dismissed the Obama administration's focus on income inequality as an Obamacare distraction and downplayed the impact of raising the minimum wage.
This is first and foremost an attempt to pivot away from something that is incredibly damaging to the administration, the so-called Affordable Care Act. And again, as I say, short run, there's a little bit of advantage here in the next couple of weeks or months in talking about raising the minimum wage, and which doesn't affect a lot of American workers.
But raising the minimum wage would impact 30 million American workers, or nearly 20% of the nation's overall workforce. That certainly sounds like a lot to me. According to the Economic Policy Institute, raising the federal minimum wage to $10.10 per hour by 2016 would lift incomes for millions of American workers, most of whom do not fit the prevailing impressions of low-wage workers as teenagers working part-time jobs for extra spending money. For more on the minimum wage and other stories, please visit MediaMatters.org.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We are still joined by the one and only David Bender, the political director of Progressive Voices. You can check it out at progressivevoices.com, and of course listen to Progressive Voices on TuneIn. So, David, we were talking about the Senate. We were talking about how the Tea Party and crazy antics of Republicans are going to play into the 2014 Senate race. But we're already seeing how those crazy antics might play into 2016. I gotta know your thoughts on Chris Christie.
Well, it is my hope, my fervent hope, that what happens is that Chris Christie, you understand, has a national role. He is the chairman of the Republican Governors Association. He is, I think, this week going to be campaigning for someone who is horribly unpopular. When you know that you're running for re-election and you need Chris Christie's help this week, then you're Rick Scott in Florida.
Yes, and I can't help but laugh.
Chris Christie is going to help.
I can't help but laugh evilly.
It is no. It's just it is the sublime and the ridiculous meeting in one. And you remember it was in fact the hug of President Obama that so damaged Charlie Crist when he was a Republican. We have to wonder whether or not it's going to be a bear hug from Chris Christie to Rick Scott. And what that photo opportunity is going to look like. If you stand the two of them side by side and Chris Christie actually hugs him, he'll crush him.
Well, that and Chris Christie hugged Obama a lot around Sandy. So does it transfer then from Obama to Christie and Christie to Rick Scott? I mean, is there some kind of law of syllogism of political hugs?
We could say he's a carrier, and he can spread Obama. But let's look at this. Let's look at what has happened with Chris Christie. Talk about falling from a pedestal. And the first thing I want to say is this is what progressive, truth-telling reporting does. Our friend Rachel Maddow broke this story back in September. It broke in the Bergen County Record in New Jersey, and none of the national media, none of the so-called mainstream media that is now all over this story on the Today Show and Good Morning America and the networks. Nobody, including, frankly, anybody else at MSNBC, nobody touched it. Rachel, over and over again, said, there's some weird things that are going on here. We need to look at this story. What is going on? And she stayed on top of it until, thanks to the subpoena power of the State Assembly in New Jersey, the truth finally came out that it was exactly what she had been saying, that this was a political act on the part of a governor's office that is the most intensely political that the state has ever seen, and that's saying something for New Jersey. So Rachel not only did that, but if you've been following her coverage of this, she did something else too. She did what I would call, the kind of reporting that we saw in Watergate. She looked at this and said, but it still doesn't make any sense that it's payback for the mayor of Fort Lee. He was never going to be someone who endorsed Christie for re-election, even though some Democrats did, and they had never asked him. So what are they paying him back for? And she went back and looked at when the decision got made, and it was back in August. And what else was going on in New Jersey? And Rachel put the pieces together. And I think we're going to see, as this story plays out, that the real target of payback was the leader of the state Senate Democrats, Majority Leader Loretta Weinberg, who had fought Chris Christie tooth and nail on his judicial appointments to the Supreme Court of New Jersey. She was on the committee and as Majority Leader and blocked two of his appointments. That night of the second vote to vote down his appointment, he called the Senate Democrats animals in New Jersey. The next morning at 7:30, it was time to shut down the traffic in Fort Lee. That's the sequence of events. And Loretta Weinberg, Senate Majority Leader, represents Fort Lee in New Jersey. Put all that together, and now you see what's really going on. And that's where I think, tug at that thread. And my hat is off to Rachel Maddow, who's done some brilliant reporting on this.
Yeah, well, that never...
In fact, we owe it to her.
It never surprises me to hear, Rachel cover a story brilliantly and brilliantly investigate things that other people miss. I'm curious on your take, and I doubt that you watch too much Fox, but on the Republican reaction in, the right instantly turning this around and saying, well, this is just a traffic jam and we didn't have any huge investigation over Benghazi or the IRS and just, what was your thoughts on...
Also the fact that a lot
we
of...
did have huge investigations over Benghazi and there was no there. And, there was nothing to the so-called IRS scandal because both, conservative and progressive groups were held up in approval. So, there was no there. This, however, with an investigation, shows, as the governor himself said, this past, at his press conference, at his endless press conference, horrifying, appalling, embarrassing, humiliating events coming right out of the governor's office. That's not what happened with any of the things the Republicans are trying to use to distract attention from that. Now, there are a lot of people like Rand Paul who are celebrating this because they hate Chris Christie. And even Ann Coulter, who thought Chris Christie was the savior that, should have been the nominee instead of Mitt Romney, she's bailed on Chris Christie as well. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. This story has a lot of legs, and what we're really going to have to watch for is whether or not after this Rick Scott campaign appearance, Chris Christie can function as the head of the Republican Governors Association. That's very, very important because they were counting on him to raise money and to help get these hold on to these Republican governorships. He could be not only in trouble himself, but he could hurt his party nationally, and that I have to say I'm looking forward to watching that happen.
Just a quick reminder to everybody in the couple minutes or so we have left. We're speaking with David Bender, the political director of Progressive Voices. I can't help but wonder, this Christie thing, lots of people are pointing to as unimportant while unemployment stuff is going on, while the TPP stuff is going on, while there's all these other issues. But I think that the reaction that we're seeing to Chris Christie is kind of a perfect, clear picture of how the Republican Party is splitting, and those who are solely loyal to party and these Tea Party radicals that we're seeing. Am I completely crazy to think that their reaction to this may play out in how races are run and laws are voted on in the following year?
No, you're not crazy at all. There's a massive fissure in the Republican Party, and how you view Chris Christie is a component of where on which side of that divide you stand. So this just gives people an opportunity to either, like Rand Paul, to pile on and make Chris Christie's life even harder, or it also shows where Republicans will and how willing they are to circle the wagons around their own, something which I wish Democrats were better at doing.
Yeah.
What we see here with Chris Christie is like a Rorschach test for the Republican Party. And I'm, continuing to just be staggered by the degree to which Republicans don't see the lessons of their own political history and still are intimidated by bullies. And that's what the Chris Christie story is about. It's about the bullying. You realize that many of us, watch Chris Christie seem to act like a statesman during Hurricane Sandy when he appeared with President Obama and praised him. If you really dig into that, Chris Christie was doing exactly what he had to do. It was the right thing, but for the wrong reasons. He was doing it because he knew he could throw Mitt Romney under the bus.
Just like he did during the convention speech, which was all about himself instead of Mitt Romney.
Exactly right. The convention speech, what happened with Hurricane Sandy and the president was calculated to promote Chris Christie. And I'm not faulting him for doing the right thing, but the point is he'll throw anybody under the bus. And that is what this scandal is showing, because now with the investigative reporting, we're seeing how he has done this to political allies. Tom Kean, the former moderate Republican, if there is such a thing, there isn't anymore, but Tom Kean, former governor of New Jersey, was the first campaign that Chris Christie ever worked in when he was 16 years old. Tom Kean Jr. said something mildly critical of Chris Christie. He's in the state legislature, and Christie went after him. The son of his mentor. This is who this man is. And this is, frankly, who many Republicans are. They are bullies. This is the Karl Rove strategy. Chris Christie is emblematic of that. So we're going to see how it plays out. We're going to see, if perhaps this new Paul Ryan strategy of working across the aisle to take the debt ceiling and the budget off the table, maybe that's will Paul Ryan be sacrificed on the altar of working with Democrats? I don't know. I'm looking forward to watching how that plays out.
It's lots of interesting stuff to watch, and we will definitely have to have you back on throughout the year to see how it's all going. But David, thank you so much for joining us. I learn something every time we get the chance to speak with you, and we just really, really always appreciate you joining us on the show.
Always a pleasure. Happy New Year.
David Bender, everybody, the political director of Progressive Voices. You can check it out at progressivevoices.com. And, of course, listen on TuneIn. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle Enchano, and we'll be back with more, so stick around.
It's just implied, but we all know what's going on in this thought bubble. The kids don't know, but we do.
It's Talking Left with Danielle Enchano.
Terrestrial radio, they don't want us Soyuz around no more, so...
They hit us, so hit them back.
SoFloRadio.com.
It's Tuesday, January 7, 2014.
Across the country, record low temperatures. From 16 below in Chicago, minus 14 in Burlington, Iowa, and negative 13 in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Baby, it's record cold outside, but only in the U.S., which means it's that time of year again.
It's the most severe winter storm in years, which would seem to contradict Al Gore's hysterical global warming theories.
No, it wouldn't, Sean.
All of that and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
2014 is off to a frigid start, folks. It was so cold on New Year's Eve that the ball went back up.
Yep, we're back. This is your Green News Report.
It happens, ladies.
Okay, Desi Doyen, we are back. Happy 2014.
Happy New Year.
So what happened here? We go away for 5 minutes and a boat gets stuck in the ice in the Arctic. It snows and it gets really, really cold in the Midwest. And so everyone has decided global warming is over. We were only away for 5 minutes, Des.
I know. It's almost as if the planet keeps turning even when we're not paying attention.
So what actually happened while we were gone?
Well, in short, with that ship that was trapped down in Antarctica, all those people have been freed, and the other icebreakers are on their way to being freed down in the Antarctic as well. But the point is, there is ice in Antarctica. Now, land ice on the continent is shrinking, but sea ice is increasing. That's caused by the warming ocean changing wind patterns exactly as predicted by climate models.
So all of my Twitter followers who said there was supposed to be no ice down there seem to have a problem telling the difference between the Arctic and the Antarctic?
They have a problem with science because science never said anything of the kind. Now, as far as the snow and the really, really cold weather, you may have heard that there's this thing called the polar vortex that has body slammed much of the U.S. with record cold.
It swirls and it swirls at 100 miles an hour. That's our polar vortex. Polar vortex.
Polar vortex. I have never experienced cold like this in my life. Things are freezing on my body that I didn't even know were possible to freeze.
The polar vortex is a super cold, super fast wind pattern that usually stays contained in the Arctic, but now it's dislodged and dropped temporarily down over the U.S., causing temperatures to swing wildly to extremes, plunging over 50 degrees in just a matter of hours in some towns.
And scientists have tied this possibly to, yes, global warming, because that polar vortex, which usually swirls just above the Arctic, has gotten warmer, and it breaks down, and it starts sliding down the globe.
Right.
And that Arctic air is what people in the Midwest are now facing.
Yeah, it's kind of like opening up the refrigerator door. Now, new research indicates that the warming Arctic, which is warming 4 times faster than the rest of the planet, is causing changes to the jet stream, which drives weather patterns in the northern hemisphere. It's slowing it down, causing it to meander and wobble and stall.
So again, climate change and global warming is likely the cause of the really cold weather in parts of the U.S.
And right on cue, like they do every winter, the climate change denial industry is pretending that a 48-hour cold snap refutes all of climate science, even though it's only actually affecting the continental U.S.
I feel bad for Al Gore. 63% of the country is now covered in snow, and it's breaking Al Gore's heart.
All this snow and still cries over global warming.
We're having a hard time understanding how global warming alarmists are still trying to push their radical position.
Global warming, a phrase we're all familiar with. I think it's going to die this year, given the kind of incredible cold weather we've had this weekend.
Well, there you go, Des. It was cold this weekend, so global warming is over.
No, not so much. Climate scientist Michael Mann, in an interview with MSNBC's Chris Hayes, explains.
How can there be snow when there's global warming?
Well, you know, we climate scientists actually have a technical term for this phenomenon. It's called winter.
Winter? I thought winter was canceled.
And what climate change deniers won't tell you is that it was warmer in Fairbanks, Alaska on Monday than it was in Georgia. In California, people are sunbathing at Lake Tahoe Ski Resort because there isn't enough snow to ski.
And if you were in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and you walked north, it would get cold for a while, but then it would get warmer because it was actually warmer near the Arctic than it was down here in the U.S.
That's right. And that same wobbly jet stream has brought mild temperatures to Western Europe and Russia, and another freight train of storms and floods to batter the UK. The climate science deniers are also not telling you that Australia right now is suffering another record heat wave with new high record temperatures over 118 degrees, and 2013 was officially Australia's hottest year on record.
Last year, they actually invented a new color to use on their weather maps because it got so hot.
And we should point out, these extreme weather events are all in line with climate science predictions.
Oh, you and your science again. For much more on that and all of the stories we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Remember, you can download us anytime on Stitcher, on TuneIn, and yes, we have a new feed as promised on iTunes. So stop on by iTunes and subscribe to the new feed. It's the one with the goofy picture of Desi and I on it. Find us and like us on the Facebook and follow us on the Twitters 24/7 at Green News Report. From bradblog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report. Happy New Year.
Ice, ice, baby. Ice, ice, baby.
Broadcasting live from Washington, D.C., this is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Politics ain't beanbag. I am who I am, but I am not a bully. I am heartbroken that someone who I permitted to be in that circle of trust for the last 5 years betrayed my trust.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. I thought you were going to break into a montage there, Shano. I thought you had some Circle of Trust quotes there.
No, as soon as I heard the Circle of Trust, all I could think about was Meet the Parents.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Trust. See, if I can't trust you, then I have no choice but to put you right back outside the circle. And once you're out, you're out. There's no coming back.
Yeah.
No coming back in for Chris Christie staffers. Although I can't wait until the press gets through all of those 2,000 pages that were released.
Note, there are more pages about this bridge closure than there were in the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
Take that, Republicans.
And I have to say, I think it's a bit of a distraction of a story, but
there's a bigger picture.
There's a bigger picture. And come on, it is a little fun poking Chris Christie.
If he were not so brazenly out there as a potential presidential candidate, it would be a little bit smaller story.
Right.
But it does fit into a larger scheme by the Republicans.
Right. And I don't think a lot of people are putting two and two together here.
Right. Just like the press focused on the life of Edward Snowden,
right,
instead of focusing on the NSA revelations and what the NSA is doing and what he told us, they focused on the messenger. And we want to talk about in the main press about Christie and what's going on with Chris Christie, and is he a bully? Is he not a bully? Is this New Jersey? Can we play the Sopranos theme again? Etc. Not that I wouldn't love to play Sopranos theme. It's fun. But it fits into a larger storyline of something that's occurred since the night of President Obama's inauguration. And what we've seen happen with Republicans across this country in state houses, North Carolina, essentially Congress, state representatives saying, we're going to punish the voters for voting for Obama.
Right.
We had Republicans, and still do, we can use Chris Christie out there. I was physically out there putting out the cones to shut down 2 lanes. Figuratively, we have Republicans in Congress who are putting down 2 cones of legislative progress. They are shutting off 2 lanes by obstructing, and just letting that little lane of traffic through that just is naming post offices after Ronald Reagan. Dr. No is out there, from Oklahoma, saying no to everything.
Yeah.
I object. We're not getting anything done. And it is retribution for electing Obama the first time and re-electing him the second time, saying, you wanted him, this is what you get.
Well, and this is the bigger picture here. This is what people should be recognizing is we've seen these type of stories come out. Now, granted, this is more scandalous because it was purely ridiculous and political, and it put people's lives at risk.
Okay, tell me how blocking the extension of unemployment insurance isn't purely political, right, ridiculous, and putting people's lives at risk.
That's exactly where I was going. That is the Republican playbook. That's the very heart of these voter, steal the vote laws. Voter ID, closing precincts, closing polling places, making people wait in line. Well, there's a reason why minority districts had 9-hour lines in Florida and wealthy districts didn't. They were punishing the people who voted for Barack Obama in 2008. They were punishing the people who elected Democrats.
Not expanding Medicaid.
Right.
Punishing people, saying you're not going to get health care.
Right.
You're not, you can vote for this guy all you want, but this is the economy you're going to get.
Right.
Unless you vote for us, in which case you get a cruddy economy, but we're going to enact a bunch of laws that are cruddy. This is what you get. It is political retribution, pure and simple. And while it may be a little more separated down the line, saying us not putting this into law is therefore someone is not getting an unemployment check, therefore someone can't pay a bill, therefore someone ends up on the street. There's a long distance between those two, connecting those 2 dots, because in the middle they'll say this is because of Obama's economy.
Right.
Whereas the Christie situation, you have a personality of an individual and you have a much more direct connection. So,
right.
So it makes for a great story on television. And people love stories and drama and conflict and in bigger than life characters.
And that is not a stab at Chris Christie's weight.
No, it wasn't. It honestly wasn't. But the exact same thing is going on every single day in state houses around this country and in our Congress.
It is. And it plays, in addition to punishing people who voted for Democrats, who supported the president, who pushed forward the Affordable Care Act, there's also I want to make it so bad for you that you won't have time to think about elections, you won't have time to follow politics, and you won't have a valid address or a valid ID or, the ability to take time off work when it comes to next election day.
Right.
I want you struggling so bad financially
that you can't get in the streets either.
Right.
You can't protest. You don't have time to write a letter to your congressperson.
Right.
You don't have, you're working 3 jobs because isn't that uniquely American? But the thing is that they want to cut off that long chain and just put Obama in the middle. The personification, because when economies go bad, you blame the president.
Right.
Period. Just like gas prices. I mean, it's ridiculous. Gas prices generally not set by the president. And this is not the Obama economy. This is not. He has tried to put things through. They've been blocked. The 2 lanes of traffic have been cut off.
Right.
And to extend the metaphor far beyond where I should, they have opened some of them up when it comes to judicial appointments, etc., which is a good thing. I think they should do it with the rest. Open up the lanes.
And they have no problem opening them up when it comes to pro-corporate trade agreements like the TPP. I think most people who listen to our show know where we work. And I had people tell me this week that their representatives, Republican representatives, actually said, oh, well, we support the TPP because we want to do something. We want to support Obama.
What?
Yeah. Really? All of a sudden you want to support Obama. And just on this, could it be that you're perfectly fine with giving a corporate giveaway to, huge multinational corporations under the guise of when it steals American jobs, when it continues the decline on wages, you're going to say, well, this is what you get for voting for Obama.
Yeah, well, I'm starting to believe that, though.
When it comes to the TPP, I absolutely agree.
And that's not what I want.
No, but and
you do remember this was a kind of just a blip, but it was a kind of a big deal at the time when we had the Democratic presidential nomination debates, and we had Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama trying to take positions, but not take positions on NAFTA.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember all that? Whether they'd renegotiate it, not renegotiate it. And it was like the big deal again was the characters, not what they were saying or what they were representing, but how they were going at it. But those were significant representations that we should have been able to pick up on. They were trying so hard to say, we're going to leave NAFTA exactly where it is.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry.
They did.
There are very few members of Congress, members of the administration, members of the executive branch, and there are very few members of the judicial branch that don't put corporations above everything. I mean, as it stands now, corporations are people, and you have a trade pact that essentially makes corporations nations. I mean, how much more can we elevate corporate status before they aren't just...
Isn't the TPP kind of the corporate UN? I mean, the EU is essentially.
Right.
It's a corporate or a UN. The TPP, if you have the TPP plus that UN treaty, it's like NATO and the UN.
Right.
But for money.
Right. The fact is...
this is significant in that Republicans hate the UN because it gives up United States sovereignty. Why should the UN tell us whether or not we can attack a country? Blah, 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 blah. But they love it when corporations get.
Well, the politics makes strange bedfellows. Yeah. And I have a feeling that the only way... agreements like the TPP is going to be stopped is some strange coalition between progressive Democrats and libertarian...
Libertarians love the TPP.
I don't think so.
What?
I don't think so. Then not if they really believe in liberty.
They think this is the ultimate liberty. Allowing corporations and people to free markets across borders, markets without borders. Hey, if we can get labor cheaper over there, go for it. We are free to do that. The corporation is free to go get the cheapest labor it possibly can because you're going to get cheaper goods. Because, by the way, your wages have gone down. That's all you can afford, if that.
Well, speaking of wages gone down, in a few minutes we're going to be speaking with Sam Sachs. I don't know have we had Sam on before?
We've not yet had Sam on.
Sam is...
It's about darn time.
Yeah, he is a brilliant commentator and writer and a regular co-host and fill-in for Tom Hartman on The Big Picture on RT. And one of the most brilliant people we know, I would easily say.
Yeah.
And he's going to help us dig through some of these economic ideas and
what we can do.
Right.
And what we can do.
So we're just minutes away from that. We're going to go to a quick break, and we'll be back. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Stick around.
Whoa, awesome.
Awesome. Totally awesome. All right.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
If you're a homeowner who's faithfully made your mortgage payments, you deserve thanks for doing the right thing. And I'd like to tell you about a powerful financial tool that rewards your commitment. Hi, I'm Jay Farner, president of Quicken Loans. And the tool that I'm talking about is the Home Affordable Refinance Program, or HARP. HARP is designed to help you lower your mortgage payments. It's for homeowners who are current on their mortgage payments, but due to the housing market may have little or no equity left in their home. And even if you were unable to get a HARP loan in the past, new guidelines mean that now you may be eligible. More than 2.5 million homeowners have already taken advantage of HARP and are saving an average of $250 a month. If you're one of the millions yet to take advantage, call us today at 800-QUICKEN. To learn more, call Quicken Loans today at 800-QUICKEN or go to QuickenLoans.com. That number again is 800-QUICKEN.
Important terms and conditions apply. Call us for cost information. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Hiya, Fred.
Hello, Eddie.
Fred, where you at?
Down here under the car.
Oh, some kind of hardcore shade tree mechanic you are, huh?
Just trying to get the Buick in shape. Heading to my sister-in-law's for the weekend.
Oh, that's got to be fun.
Yeah, Parts Plus makes it easy.
Don't look forward to seeing mine.
Got the parts you need, good prices, and good advice when I need some.
Huh? Parts? What are you talking about?
Talking about Parts Plus. Ain't you listening? Hand me that wrench there, will you?
For the location nearest you, go to PartsPlus.com.
Really? No way. Hey, I'm Eric from Sam Adams, here to get craft beer drinkers' reaction as they secretly taste Sam Adams Boston Lager. It's got a good body. It's got a great taste. It's very smooth. I like that. Think you've had this beer before?
No.
This is Sam Adams Boston Lager. Sam Adams!
I was going to say Sam
Adams. That's easy to drink.
It's tasty. It's a very flavorful, drinkable beer.
Smooth, but it does have flavor. I love a Boston Lager.
What this test did is it put Sam Adams back on the map for me.
Boston Beer Company, Boston, Mass. Save responsibly.
Life is a wild ride, but even that couldn't prepare you for this. You're on your 9th wild ride, the Carnival Twist and Whirl, your granddaughter's wishes trumping your amusement park fears. And it's here, healthy enough to feel the joy over the terror that the question hits you. How did I get here? Was it just hard work or smart choices? Like choosing Rite Aid and exclusive benefits for seniors with Rite Aid's new Wellness 65 Plus program. You get free pharmacist consultations that include medication reviews, blood pressure screenings, and immunization checklists. Wellness 65 Plus also gives you points for every prescription, even Medicare, that earn you up to 20% off your Rite Aid purchases fast. All meant to keep you here. Now that you've actually gotten here. Here, being the best and bravest grandma in the whole wide world. Stop by and enroll free in Wellness 65 Plus at Rite Aid today. With us, it's personal. Certain limitations apply. See your Rite Aid store or RiteAid.com for details.
This is the Media Matters Minute. I'm Coleman Lowndes. Bill O'Reilly featured a segment on marijuana on his show, but when Fox contributor Juan Williams confronted him about arrests of casual marijuana users, O'Reilly dismissed the facts.
I think that if you start to arrest their children, and give them records and put barriers in front of their futures and their careers, I think people say, wait a second, as you said in the previous segment, this is soft drug use. Why are you arresting and giving this kid a record, especially minority kids disproportionately? They're the ones who get arrested.
Only dealers, Juan. There's no mass arrests of users. No, they get a ticket, Juan. They get a ticket, so it's like speed.
But data from the FBI contradicts O'Reilly's claims. FBI statistics show that marijuana possession accounted for over 40% of all drug arrests in 2012. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, more than 7 million people were arrested between 2001 and 2010 for marijuana possession. The ACLU also notes that although young white and black Americans use pot at similar rates, young black Americans are nearly 4 times as likely to be arrested for it. For more on the war on drugs and other stories, please visit Media Matters.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you are checking us out. SoFlo Radio, We Act Radio, or hanging out over in the chat room with us at TalkingLeft.com. Please connect with us. Facebook and Twitter at Talking Left. We would love to chat with you there. And, you know, this week marked the 50th anniversary of Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty. Mm-hmm. And it plays into so many of the issues we've talked about today. You know, free trade and the Republicans taking striking out against those who tend to vote Democrat.
And the nice thing is that we've often complained. This is something that Matt of Messaging Matters points out, that so often Democrats, liberals, progressives are responding to ridiculous conservative claims, policies, talking points, etc. Finally, the president gave this amazing speech at Center for American Progress
on economic
on economic inequality,
mm-hmm.
and it really struck a chord. Whether it was heard far and wide, it was definitely heard in the heart of D.C. And now we have Republicans responding to this. Now their response is ridiculous.
Yes, and they're having to take special coaching sessions to learn how to respond and actually be able to sound like they have a heart.
Well, remember to the last election, just a Herman came. If you don't have a job, blame yourself.
Right.
That is their policy. That is their mentality. And if you went out there today and said that, you would get booed off a stage. I don't care who you are. Things have changed a lot.
Well, I think even this was something I said to David Bender. Even at some point, you can't fool the foolish. Mm-hmm. Even the Republican voters who, let's face it, have a tendency to vote against their own best interest. Mm-hmm. When you can make the lies about Obamacare. You can say how this is going to hurt jobs, or that people are going to, have to spend so much money out of pocket. But you cannot spin denying people unemployment benefits when they know. I don't care if they are Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, or whatever, independent. They know they're out there looking for jobs. Right. They know how hard they're working, and they know what the labor market is like. And you tell them that they are the freeloaders and you're taking away their unemployment benefits, you are going to tick some people off.
So therefore, you need to know how to talk about it. You have to be taught how to message, blame yourself into, cutting taxes and lowering regulations will ensure that you get unemployment insurance. Somehow they get there.
Yeah.
And I would need a paper to figure out how to get between those two, too, because they don't.
Yeah, I would need a roadmap.
It would look crazy.
This Republicans talking about the war on poverty is laughable because they have done nothing during these past 50 years but rail against any type of anti-poverty efforts, always using dog whistle politics to talk about racism, sexism, that these are all just
Cadillac moms.
Right. These are all just
freeloaders.
Right. Single women who went around and slept with everybody, got pregnant, or they are minority voters who don't want to do anything but sit on the couch. That's what Republicans want people to believe. And while the civil rights movement was going on, some of them were brazen enough to outright say that. Now they say things like, these heritage reports, the Heritage Foundation reports that come out and say people get $100,000 living off welfare benefits, that
the one from the local Fox station in Pennsylvania that was $80,000, where they were aggregating things that were impossible to qualify for.
Right, like you can't
have a home exemption at the same time as you're getting assistance for rent.
Right,
know.
But it is laughable. But there are things that we could really be doing.
Yes.
To actually fight economic inequality, to fight poverty, to make a difference in people's lives. And there was a great article by Jesse Meyerson in Rolling Stone, the 5 economic reforms millennials should be fighting for. And we're going to speak with Sam Sachs about it because he knows a thing or two about economics. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we're going to be back with Sam Sachs. So stick around.
What is this? What's going on?
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Perhaps you thought the political world was finally safe from the dynamic duo of Ford and Raydell. But no, here they come, rushing back into the limelight. Rob Ford, the explosive mayor of Toronto, became a global punchline last fall when a video showed his honor smoking crack cocaine. Then came little blow-ups involving sexual harassment, a murder threat, knocking down a city councilwoman, and drunken rages. Yet, on January 2nd, Rob was back, filing for re-election and blurting out that my record speaks for itself. Well, he's right about that. Even less charming is Trey Raydell, a first-term Congress critter from Fort Myers, Florida. His chief accomplishment in Washington was getting arrested last October for trying to buy cocaine from an undercover cop. But rather than humbly stepping down or even quieting down, Trey called a December press conference to announce that he's healed. Having completed a 28-day treatment program for addiction, though apparently not for narcissism, the former TV anchorman declared himself fit to return to what I do, what you sent me to do in Washington. Presumably, that does not include scuttling around back alleys seeking drugs and drink. Raydell said that, thanks to God and family, he's a changed man. For one thing, while he still insists that poor families should be subjected to drug tests in order to get food stamps, he has slightly amended that Dickensian stance. I think members of Congress should be tested as well, he said with a straight face. This is Jim Hightower saying, so Raydell wants poor people's food stamps automatically taken away if they're caught using drugs. But a lawmaker who gets nabbed can keep drawing his $170,000 a year government salary. Still, that doesn't make Raydell a hypocrite because, as Stephen Colbert points out, lawmakers don't get food stamps.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham.
It's really a corporate extortion plan by Boeing trying to make aerospace a race to the bottom. 7,000 to 8,000 members didn't vote on it, and it was such a slim margin. 300 votes either way would have changed it. That means about 37.5% of the members actually got to decide the fate for the next 10 years, which erases 78 years of collective bargaining history.
International Association of Machinists District 751 spokesperson Connie Kelleher. Many IAM District 751 Boeing machinists are very angry about the vote forced on them by their international union that destroyed defined benefit pensions, increased healthcare costs, and diminished wages. Some members have filed charges with the National Labor Relations Board and are demanding a revote when a true majority of IAM Boeing members would have a chance to cast ballots. Kelleher says that due to members being away on holidays vacation, about 25% of members didn't vote on this concessionary contract proposal.
Members are very upset. There's been a huge outcry since Friday's vote was announced from members calling for a revote. Our international president forced this vote under the guise of he wanted the members to have the final say on it. Well, if you want the members to have the final say, don't pick a day where you know 25 to 30% of them are not available. A lot of people are very upset and the NLRB. They are passing around petitions that they want to call for a revote when truly a majority of the members could determine the fate. Our international president has said all along that he responds to hearing from the members, so right now the members are busy speaking up and letting him hear them.
Kelleher says the contract Boeing forced on workers under threat of moving the production of the 777X airliner was corporate extortion that squeezed both the workers and $8.7 billion in tax concessions from Washington state. And she says despite this being portrayed as giving up pensions and other concessions in return for guaranteed jobs, there is no real ironclad jobs guarantee for future Washington state union jobs from Boeing in this contract.
For a 2-paragraph language giving us the airplane, the first sentence says we get the work, and the next 2 paragraphs give them loopholes to move it. It not only gave up the defined benefit pension, it destroyed the health care, really. The premiums will go up 300% by the end, copays will double, all policies drop to 90% coverage on everything. In addition, wage growth is cut by 75% from the current contract, which was only a 2% wage increase each year. It'll now be 1% every other year, and then it'll go 3 years.
Meanwhile, Boeing is making record profits. The CEO got a 20% raise last year, and he has a pension that will pay him $265,000 a month when he retires, and a supplemental pension on top of that. IAM International President Tom Buffenbarger was not available for an interview, but the International says the $8.7 billion in legislative incentives in Washington state are contingent on Boeing remaining in Puget Sound. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Okay, so 5 tacos of cheese and a large soda, that's $10,012. Please drive around.
Wait, 10,000 what?
It's obvious you're buzzed and driving.
I've only had a few. I'm fine.
Yeah, the food's $12, but getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Please drive around. Actually, just park and come in.
Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We are very excited to be speaking with our next guest, the absolutely brilliant and talented, perhaps one of the smartest and most talented people I have the pleasure to know, Mr. Sam Sachs, progressive commentator, writer, amazing researcher, and more. Sam, thank you so much for joining us on Talking Left.
Hey, Danielle. Thanks for having me. Hopefully I can live up to that introduction.
I have
no
doubt.
You'd better, dang it. No, I was kidding.
No, you have such an amazing understanding of many things, but one of them, economics, and how these policies we could be fighting for are have the potential to really change our nation. I wanted to get your take on this Rolling Stone piece by Jesse Meyerson, the 5 economic reforms that millennials should be fighting for. I know you've been talking about a lot of these for a long time. Were you happy to see this piece get so much attention in the media?
Yeah, I was, and I was pretty surprised. Jesse's a friend of mine, and he was pretty well shocked at all the attention he's gotten. I think his Twitter feed has just been taken over by some of the craziest things that have possibly been said about economics in the last week. But look, I think the point of Jesse's piece here, and of course, for people who don't know, we're referring to the 5 economic reforms millennials should be fighting for. It was published in Rolling Stone this last week. And I think ultimately Jesse's trying to make the point that capitalism is broken, that as an economic system, capitalism just isn't providing in the way that it should for tens of millions of unemployed and impoverished Americans, many of whom are millennials. Young people are really feeling the brunt of this recession. And I guess you can argue whether or not this degradation of American capitalism is a result of mismanagement by greedy corporate fat cats, Reaganists, over the last 3 decades that's kind of created this corporatism in America, or whether this is sort of the natural way that capitalism goes over time, that as an economic system, it fundamentally breaks down. The money gets aggregated in the hands of the few, and that money is then used to weaken our democratic institutions and corrupt our political systems.
Yeah.
Who knows what the reason for why this is happening, but with this piece, Jesse lays out two possible solutions. You can either save capitalism by implementing some of these reforms. Remember, FDR, when he got us out of the Great Depression, he was credited with saving capitalism itself. His reforms with Social Security created the way to keep capitalism moving forward for the next several decades, as we've seen in America. There was a lot of calls for a lot more different economic systems and political systems in the time in America. And because FDR was able to soften the edges of capitalism, we were able to keep it as an economic system. So Jesse could be proposing efforts to save capitalism itself, or this could also be considered a bridge to a new economic system. And I think this is what's most frightening to conservatives and why this piece got so much attention, is because if you go to Jesse's Twitter profile, he has a hashtag for full communism, and Jesse's not afraid to say that he's a communist. And he likely views these reforms as a bridge to get from this sort of American corporate capitalism that we see that's breaking down to a new more socialist economic system that can provide for all in a much better way than we're seeing today.
Yeah, and I think some of the reforms he offers here make so much sense, both socially for what they can do for people and economically, starting with guaranteed work for everybody, making the government the employer of last resort. We have such a problem with unemployment, and we need so much work to be done. There's so much work to be done, infrastructure, education, etc. Isn't this a win-win for the economy and the country?
Yeah, and it's really not that radical of an idea. I mean, this is what Roosevelt did with the WPA. We have something like a $2 trillion infrastructure debt in America. That means our infrastructure, our bridges, our roads, rails, they need $2 trillion in repairs just to get to where they should be. That doesn't include making them 21st century compatible with fast trains, light rail, and things like that. We're talking just renovating them so that they get back in their 20th century mode that they should be in. And you also have tens of millions of Americans who are out of work or unemployed. It seems like you can connect those two somehow. Let's put these people to work rebuilding our infrastructure. And this is stuff that that President Obama has been trying to push for the last several years. Democrats in Congress have been trying to push, probably not in perhaps the bold nature that Jesse's proposing here and that Roosevelt utilized back to get us out of the Great Depression. But this is really economics 101. Huge unemployment, lots of work needed to do on our public infrastructure. Put the two together and make it happen. And also Jesse proposes not just doing this through government, but using the nonprofit sector to help out and put a lot of people into work, working on issues that they care about, not working in some phone bank or working in some grocery store, but actually trying to do stuff that they're passionate about that will benefit all of us in the long run.
It makes so much sense to me. And then his next suggestion. He says Social Security for all. I've heard about this in other nations as a minimum basic income. This is one, Sam, I don't understand why Republicans don't support. They rail against food stamps, against unemployment, against Social Security, Medicare. If everybody was provided a basic minimum income, wouldn't it actually cost the government less money than all of these various social programs we need to keep people out of poverty?
Yeah, it really would. I mean, another word is a universal basic income. This is something that Switzerland is considering. Look, we're the wealthiest nation in the world. We have more billionaires here than anywhere else. But at the same time, there's 47 million Americans who need food stamps to eat. So there's a big disconnect here. There's a big problem with wealth inequality, and we need to somehow look at income differently. We shouldn't just connect income to labor. Income should be a sort of basic right to living in America here. And it does good for the whole country when money is taken out of the hands of people who aren't doing anything with it, hoarders, billionaires, who they aren't going to be able to spend that much amount of money in their lifetime, their children's lifetime, their children's lifetime. It's just sitting in banks, and we know what banks are doing with that money. If we can get that money somehow in the hands of people who will spend it, workers who use up all of their disposable income each month, that will generate demand in the economy. That will get the economy going and make even wealthy people even wealthier. This is something that, as you said, Danielle, everyone should seemingly get behind. And considering the fact that workers' wages have been flatlined, that the minimum wage, if it were to keep up with inflation and keep up with workers' productivity, should be $5 to $10 higher than it is today, so basically twice what it is. This is a way to get around that. Go ahead and give those workers the amount of money that they should earn, that they've deserved throughout the year, right at the beginning with a check at the beginning of the year.
And this is being done in certain places. I mean, this is basically what Alaska does, isn't it, with the giving everybody income just for living there?
Right. This is essentially what Alaska, and this goes to Jesse's fourth reform, which is make everything owned by everybody. And I think it's the titles of these reforms that also make conservatives heads explode. But he makes a point. I mean, Alaska basically owns their oil resources, and they lease out the rights to extract these oil resources to oil companies. So the oil companies have to pay royalties, and all that money goes into the Alaskan government, and the Alaskan government turns around and hands that money off to their citizens every year in the form of like $1,000 paycheck. If you were to turn this program nationally and expand it not just to oil leases, but all uses of our land and all uses of our legal system and our stock market and all the ways that the 1% or 2% are benefiting at the expense of all of us, then you could more than easily pay for a sort of universal basic income for all Americans, $10,000, $20,000 each.
Yeah. I just want to remind everybody, we're speaking with Sam Sachs, progressive commentator and writer. You can follow him on Twitter at Sam Sachs. You can see him fill in for Tom as well as do all kinds of other interesting segments at on RT, on your cable or internet station. Another one of Jesse's suggested reforms here, and this is one I'm not as familiar with, so please help me understand, is the land value tax, the take back the land. I hadn't ever thought about how much society and taxpayers contribute to make land value increase. But he says that we should all be sharing in that.
Yeah, and people don't want to pay taxes. That's the big movement out of the right wing today. Get rid of the income tax. Get rid of all these taxes. Okay, let's get rid of the income tax. Let's get rid of all these consumption taxes. We could basically fund our entire government and fund many of these reforms that we're talking about here with a land value tax by taxing the value of land. And this is the stuff that you don't build. There was this whole debate during the election of you didn't build that, or, yes, we did build this. You didn't build the land. You didn't build the resources. That stuff was there before you. It will be there long after you. And just because you've stuck a flag in the ground and said, look, everything here is mine and I'm going to start using it for profit, doesn't mean we should just go along with that. Look, a land value tax, I think, is a great idea. It will lessen wealth inequality. It will get the tax base replenished by people who can afford to pay it the most. The people who own most of the land in America and are just sitting on it and profiting off of it, despite having little work, like landlord or oil companies that are just sitting on vast tracts of public land. They should be paying considerably more for that.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me, and I'm surprised that I hadn't thought much about it, but reading his article and hearing you talk about it's clear as day.
The funny thing about a lot of this is, and despite how conservatives have exploded over the last week, a lot of these reforms, as we talked about, are not that radical. Alaska is using them. Other countries in Europe are using them. They've been used in our own country in the past. And this shows that there is really a lack of debate in Washington, D.C. and on a federal level now. Why are these issues not on the table for lawmakers, yet far right-wing libertarian proposals are? We can go out there and we can write about and talk about privatizing Social Security, privatizing Medicare. We can talk about privatizing prisons. We can talk about going to war all over the world. These are all extremely radical ideas that are just adopted in the mainstream. But if you propose changing the way we collect taxes or propose a public works program, people go absolutely freaking insane. It doesn't make sense. And it's because the far left is just not represented in Congress other than, maybe through Bernie Sanders and some members in the Progressive Caucus in the House. And they're not represented in the media to a large extent, other than on great shows like you guys' show and on Tom's show. But in the mainstream media, you don't see this perspective represented at all. So that's why these issues have never really been discussed recently on a national level. And it's good to see them discussed now. It's good to see that for the last 30 years of Reaganism and corporatism and the ideas that have been put on the table, it's nice to hear these other ideas talked about over the last week, too.
It really is, and it's nice to see them being forced into right-wing media. So often we, as Democrats, as progressives, have been forced to respond to what it is the right is doing, and for once that has completely flipped on its head, and they are having to respond to progressive ideas. The last proposal Jesse offers here, and I just want to get your quick opinion on it in the couple minutes we have left, is public banking. Talk about things Republicans lose their mind over.
Yeah, right. I mean, but given how dangerous the banking industry can be to the whole economy when it's mismanaged, this seems like a really good idea that you can make a very strong argument at this point, given that a banking collapse has been behind every economic crash we've had, that banking should be a public good. And that's really the argument that Jesse is making here. We need a safe, reliable, boring banking industry that's geared toward helping basically grease the Main Street economy, not just enriching the Wall Street economy. There's a public bank in North Dakota. It works by taking taxpayer revenue into the bank's coffers, and then the bank goes and directly lends money out to farmers, to small businesses, and they're not going out and speculating, and they're not going out and creating crazy financial instruments that are going to explode a few years down the road and take the economy down with them. The Bank of North Dakota weathered the crash of 2008 extremely well, and people in the state of North Dakota itself has weathered the crash extremely well. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that they're the only state that has this sort of public bank. And if other states were to adopt this model and we kind of shifted away from the privatized get-rich-quick model of banking toward the safe, reliable, common good notion of banking, I think we'd go a long way to getting rid of these mood swings in the economy and making sure that Main Street has access to credit and not just the 1% having access to credit.
Sam, you explain things so amazingly well. I know I know you have already gone so far, and you just have such an amazing future ahead of you. I would not be surprised to see a President Sam Sachs someday. I got to be honest.
I think I might have too many skeletons in my closet for that, but try and change it from the outside.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. You are brilliant, and we are honored to call you a friend.
Thanks, and I'm glad to call you guys friends too, and hopefully we'll do this again.
Absolutely. Sam Sachs, everybody, progressive commentator and writer, one of the most brilliant people on earth, if you couldn't tell by listening to that interview. So you're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle Shano, and we will be back with more, so stick around.
So, who is responsible for these outrages?
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Have you heard? Proactive is better than ever. Stay tuned for a 1,000,000 bottle giveaway, and you'll also receive free shipping. Do you have troubled skin, acne? Well, we have great news. With Proactive, your acne can heal, and you can prevent new breakouts from happening. Don't miss this limited time offer. Give us a call at 1-800-644-7214, because we're going to let 1,000,000 people try Proactive risk-free, get 2 free gifts, and also receive free shipping when you call right now. You heard it. This offer won't last long, so call Proactive now and you'll receive a 60-day risk-free trial of Proactive, 2 free extras, and free shipping. Call 1-800-644-7214. This is our best radio offer ever. Get your risk-free 60-day trial of Proactive plus free shipping. That's right, free shipping. Don't wait. Visit getproactive.com or call 1-800-644-7214. That's 1-800-644-7214.
Hiya, Fred.
Hello, Eddie.
So, where are you heading off to?
Just gonna take a ride down to Parts Plus. Wanna come with?
All the way to Parts Plus.
Oh, quit your fussing and get in.
I just don't see why you want to drive all the way to Parts Plus when it's big discounts.
See, there you go. You don't know what you're talking about. Parts Plus has stuff that box store never thought about carrying, and the people there know cars.
Okay, all right.
Parts Plus. You'll see.
For the location nearest you, go to PartsPlus.com.
Hey, sweetie, what's going on?
Well, honey, I have some news.
Okay, what?
All that training paid off. I got the job.
Oh, I knew you would get it. So when do you start?
When you donate stuff to Goodwill, you help provide job training for people right here in your community. Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
This is the Media Matters Minute. I'm John Kerr. On the 50th anniversary of Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty, Fox Business host Stuart Varney dismissed anti-poverty programs as ineffective. Varney, who has repeatedly mocked low-income Americans, ignores widespread evidence that government programs have been vital in decreasing the poverty rate.
We have not made that much progress in reducing the poverty rate. 15% of Americans are still in poverty. It's roughly the same level as it was back in 1964. It did help feed hungry people, treat sick people, and it did raise the standard of living for many, many poor people. However, the proportion of people still living in poverty, pretty much the same as it was back in 1964.
These federal programs that Varney discounts have actually been crucial in reducing the poverty rate during the past 50 years. According to a recent study by the Columbia Population Research Center at Columbia University, government programs today are cutting poverty rates nearly in half. Without these programs, poverty rates in the United States today would be at around 29%. For more on this and other stories, please visit me.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you are hanging out with us, We Act Radio, SoFlo Radio, or hanging out in the chat room with us over at TalkingLeft.com. Major thanks to Sam Sachs. He is so brilliant.
That was a great segment.
I
thought I understood that article before. Now I really understand that article.
All I can do is just listen to him and smile because he's so brilliant. But one of the things we were talking about there is, flipping the narrative.
Yeah.
For years, for decades, Democrats have been responding to Republicans. It is one of the primary reasons why not just the political process, but the media has continued to be pushed further and
Well,
further and further to the right.
I think they've been complicit in this.
Yeah, true.
Really have the bringing on and adopting in their lexicon the Frank Luntzisms.
Yeah.
That moves the entire playing field in terms of how where the discussion is being had. But this is it's really great that it's moved around, because now Fox News is their heads are exploding.
Well, one of the things Sam talked about is, we constantly talk about far-right policies. I mean, for goodness sakes, Democrats are supporting the TPP. Democrats are supporting the NSA. Things that if you think about what the actual majority of Americans want are extreme, are completely outside of the center.
Mm-hmm.
And yet when we bring up concepts like a minimum basic income or public banking, we are socialists and
commies, and we're going to instate the gulag.
Right.
What's interesting is, remember when John McCain, there was a debate about GI benefits, returning veterans, how much benefits they're going to get, whether, educational credits, all kinds of things like that. And he argued, this was years ago, that they should not be too high, that they should not be increased, because then people won't stay in the military. So essentially he said, we can't make it too sweet to get out of the military, because we want these kids to stay over there and get killed or, wounded, battle, become career soldiers, rather than giving them that opportunity for success. Not that you can't be successful in the military, but some kind of, civilian life, if that's what you want. We need to make it almost like not mandatory conscription, but economically, kind of in a corner.
Right. Leave them. And that's why a lot of people enroll in the military. They have no other economic option.
So that was kind of like a gaffe, in that we kind of knew this all along, but it was finally said out loud. The reaction of conservatives to this article shows exactly what they really think, that they do not want a mandatory minimum salary for every person in this country, because who's going to clean? They've even said that, who's going to do those jobs? Because no one want to do that. They recognize that one of their goals is to keep a permanent underclass that will do those lousy jobs for less than $8 an hour.
Right. I mean, think about this. We see it much more clearly when they make arguments against immigration reform, because they constantly say, who's going to pick our crops, who's going to work in low wage, in-home service jobs, cleaning, et cetera. They think that if you treat people well, they will no longer have anybody to do these menial jobs.
Right. Well, but they'll say we're conservatives, so we're not so much concerned about equal outcomes, but we want equal opportunity.
Yeah, give me a break.
But if you actually provide that opportunity, which would be some kind of minimum, economic standard, because then you can go out and you could become a business owner, or you could start a new art studio, or you could start a new internet company.
Or you could be a stay-at-home parent
actual
if you
opportunity.
wanted to.
No, they want people without opportunity who will then change their baby's diapers.
Right. That's exactly what they want.
So they say one thing, they mean a completely other thing, and how they respond to this article is what's really in their hearts.
Well, and it's all part of this bigger picture that I really wanted to talk about today. This joke of the Republicans talking about the war on poverty as if it was a failure. The reason why the war on poverty hasn't been as successful as it could have been is because of right-wing policies. And I will not just blame Republicans for that.
Bill Clinton.
Yeah, exactly. You have NAFTA, you have welfare reform, Bill Clinton.
Right.
But this is a bigger picture. And we're going to talk with Nicole Flato of Think Progress Justice about one of the ways Republicans have been waging this war on the poor and demonizing those who need help from the government, who need access to a financial lifeline with drug testing of welfare recipients. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we will be back with more, so stick around.
This is not normal.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Terrestrial radio, they don't want us or yous around no more, so...
They hit us, so hit them back.
SoFloRadio.com.
It's Thursday, January 9, 2014.
Suddenly, clean tech was a dirty word.
Suddenly, so was 60 Minutes. Inside the 60 Minutes hit piece on America's clean energy industry. By the way, don't tell CBS News, but clean energy is booming. Plus,
the lack of rain has now qualified California for severe drought status.
Record drought in California with no end in sight.
All of those records and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Looks to me like we're looking at global cooling. Forget this global warming. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, your opinion. That's your opinion. It means nothing.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This is your Green News Report.
Yeah, based on its flavor, I think lead paint is good to drink. That's my opinion.
Okay, Desi Doyen, it's just your opinion. That seems to be what suffices for news, somebody's opinion. And while we expect that from the right-wing loons, we don't really expect that from CBS News and 60 Minutes. But I guess maybe now that's what we should start expecting.
I know. A very strange, very bizarre report from 60 Minutes. On top of recent reporting failures at the venerable news magazine, including on Benghazi, now this, 60 Minutes aired what is being described as a hit piece on America's clean energy industry with correspondent Leslie Stahl.
The federal government has allocated a total of $150 billion to clean tech through loans, grants, and tax breaks with little to show for it.
The taxpayers have lost a lot of money in the general clean tech area.
60 Minutes only looked at the Department of Energy's loan program intended to boost America's clean energy industry, but strangely, CBS focused only on the 3% of companies that failed and didn't even mention the 97% of companies that succeeded with the loan program.
That bears repeating. 97% of those who received federal loans under this green energy loan program succeeded. 3% have so far failed. That is a better success rate than the private venture capital industry. The government did a better job of picking winners and losers than private investors.
Yeah.
But 60 Minutes didn't mention a word of it.
No. And in a follow-up with Climate Progress, clean tech executive and chemical engineer Robert Rapier, who was interviewed for the 60 Minutes piece, said that CBS edited out everything he said about the successes of clean tech and kept only the negatives. Many energy reporters have also noted CBS News ignored the most important point of data on clean energy, the rapidly falling price of renewables versus the unrelenting rising price of oil. And most importantly, 60 Minutes didn't even mention climate change once, which is the whole point of breaking free from fossil fuels, giving viewers the misleading impression that we actually have a choice on whether to switch to clean energy.
Didn't mention climate change, didn't mention the successes of clean energy, edited out interviewees saying that clean energy was a big success. Kind of sounds like Fox News to me.
Yes, and as you've reported over at BradBlog.com, there's a reason for that.
There is a reason for that. As of February 2011, the president of CBS News is a guy by the name of David Rhodes. David Rhodes was formerly the VP of News at Fox News. That's right. The VP of Fox News now runs CBS News. I think that helps to put in context their failure with the Clean Tech Report, Benghazi, and all of the other failures at 60 Minutes, the once great news magazine.
So let's talk about the things that aren't failures, but don't tell CBS News or 60 Minutes. In 2013 alone, the U.S. deployed enough wind energy to power 15 million homes. Last year, wind power broke through in Spain to become Spain's top source of electricity. In Germany, Denmark, and Scotland, renewables now provide over 30% of their electricity every day. Also, don't tell 60 Minutes that the Chinese government just announced it will triple China's current wind energy capacity in 7 years. And solar is booming, too. In the U.S., more rooftop solar was installed in California alone in the last year than in the past 30 years combined.
See 60 Minutes? You could have just said that.
Meanwhile, the polar vortex and its cold snap have moved on, but drought is here to stay in California. 2013 was California's driest year on record, and there's no relief expected in 2014. Kevin Trenberth, lead scientist at the U.S. National Center for Atmospheric Research, tells NBC,
"This ultimately will increase the risk of wildfires."
And it's not just wildfires. The lack of precipitation is impacting California's multi-billion-dollar farming, ranching, and tourism industries. And it's also why some California state lawmakers are pushing Governor Jerry Brown for a moratorium on fracking in the state, because that uses over 4 million gallons of fresh water per well.
For much more on that and all of the other stories we didn't get to, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Don't forget, we've got a new feed on iTunes, so if you haven't subscribed there yet, it's free. Please go to iTunes and subscribe. It's the feed with the picture of the lovely Desi Doyen and the not-so-lovely me. Find us on the Facebook and follow us 24/7 on the Twitters at Green News Report. From bradblog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report. Is that so hard, 60 Minutes?
Broadcasting live from Washington, D.C., this is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you are hanging out with us, SoFlo Radio, We Act Radio, or over in the chat room at talkingleft.com. We've been talking today a lot about the war on poverty versus the war on the poor. And one of the ways
on the impoverished.
Yeah, one of the ways Republicans have been doing this in state after state is by subjecting welfare recipients to drug tests. Joining us now is Nicole Flato of Think Progress Justice. You can check it out at thinkprogress.org, and you can follow her on Twitter at Nick Flato. Nicole, there was a great court ruling recently that said Florida can't do this anymore. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So last week, a Florida federal judge affirmed what they had previously said, which was that blanket drug testing of welfare applicants is unconstitutional. And that's because a drug test is a Fourth Amendment search. It's basically an invasion of your constitutional privacy, and the government has to have a reasonable suspicion the person who is being tested is engaged in some criminal activity, and they rightly found that there is no nexus between people who are applying for welfare and people who are, allegedly engaged in illicit activities such as drug use. So, it was really positive, although there have been a number of other rulings to that effect, and it hasn't really deterred Governor Scott or a number of other lawmakers. So I think they seem to be more concerned with the sort of political appeal of these laws, even if they later get struck down.
Well, and in addition to being found and ruled unconstitutional, which, as you said, this is multiple rulings. This ruling by Judge Scriven, I believe is how it's pronounced, confirmed earlier rulings. But in addition to that, these programs actually end up usually costing taxpayers much more money than they're saving. How do Republicans square that circle? I mean, what other purpose is this, or are these laws, except for demonizing those who need some financial help?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right about that. And I think that's kind of been just pushed under the rug. There's really no explanation for the fact that they have, in fact, been costing states more money than they're saving, and also a lot of time, which, of course, is also money, and that states have nonetheless continued to perpetuate these laws because people who are not following this closely, which, of course, most people aren't, find it sort of intuitively appealing if you have biases about the sorts of people that might apply for public benefits programs. And so it just allows them to continue doing this, although it's not really reasonable or rational. And they've actually also found one of the reasons why it costs less is because there has been less incidence of drug use based on this testing than there is in the general population among welfare applicants. So there's really no reason to think that they would be more likely to use drugs. And the other really nice thing that the judge in this case pointed out was, one, there's no reason to believe that this population is any more likely to engage in drug abuse. And two, to the extent that they do, there's no reason to believe that they're any more likely to be a danger to the general population than anyone else would be who's using drugs and not being tested, as a prerequisite to applying to a government program.
Right. We're not talking about people who need to operate heavy equipment or who are, conducting medical procedures or things where there might be a reasonable requirement to make sure somebody is not on some sort of substance. These are just people who need food stamps or welfare benefits.
Yeah, and in fact, all you're doing by depriving these people of benefits because of the fact that there was some drugs found in their system is you're depriving their families of, basics such as food and basic sustenance for kids, because that's, how most of these public assistance programs work. It's for families in which they have children that need the money. And so there's no mechanism in the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program, that's the actual name of the welfare program, that says, okay, well, we found you test positive for drug use, and somehow we've now concluded that you're abusing drugs, and now we're going to, separate you from your children or do anything to that effect. You just will not have money to support your children.
Right.
So that was another interesting thing that the judge pointed out. There's really no public benefit to depriving these people of their benefits either.
I just want to remind everybody, we're speaking with Nicole Flato of Think Progress Justice. You can check out all of her amazing articles. You do great coverage, Nicole, over at thinkprogress.org. Follow her on Twitter at Nick Flato. I think that these type of drug tests are somewhat dog whistle politics, where the media and right-wing lawmakers tend to insinuate, if not outright claim, that there is much higher percentage of drug use among minority populations, and there also tends to be much higher rates of poverty. Is this not some type of mechanism to see all these people on welfare are just sitting around using drugs, as people on Fox have outrightly said?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I absolutely think that that's the message, and it sort of tracks a lot of the general debate that's going on now about drug use and criminalization, right, which is what's so interesting about it. There's sort of this parallel thing in which marijuana, for example, is being, decriminalized or legalized in various ways in some places, and at the same time there's this proliferation of drug testing for people that are, for example, using marijuana. And one of the arguments for legalizing it is that, blacks and whites and minorities all use marijuana at about the same rate, and yet blacks are arrested 4 times more frequently than whites are, which again, of course, perpetuates the stereotype that they are, more greater users of drugs, which is not supported by any evidence. And as we already discussed, welfare applicants in particular are actually less frequent users than the general population.
Yeah, go figure. When people don't have money for food, they tend to not spend money on drugs. It seems pretty logical to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
How much of this, like the way Florida's law is designed, where applicants technically have to consent to the test, but they cannot get temporary assistance for needy family benefits unless they consent to this and give up a portion of their civil rights. Isn't this kind of also a part of our dwindling expectation of privacy, where it's just considered acceptable in this day and age that somebody has to give up their constitutional rights to receive a benefit that they are entitled to kind of take that word back from Republicans?
Yeah, I mean, I think that second half is an interesting question. Absolutely, you're right that the basis for the court ruling was that this is, in fact, a violation of constitutional rights. And so whatever political arguments you want to make in either direction, the bottom line is that we've long considered something like a drug test to be a very invasive search into someone's personal life, and that we don't allow that by the government into individuals without reasonable suspicion that they've done something wrong, or another very compelling reason to be concerned that it will be a risk to public safety or something else. And so really there's no basis for feeling that way in this case. And some of the messages that were sent by lawmakers in at least one state in response to this was, okay, well, if you want to pass a law to test all welfare applicants, let's also pass a law to test all lawmakers, right? Because if there's a concern about welfare applicants, then why shouldn't we have a concern about lawmakers? But of course, those laws typically don't pass, right? And so we're not really subjecting other populations to the same sort of scrutiny. In terms of whether there's sort of an erosion of this expectation of privacy, I'm not sure whether it carries over into sort of the drug testing sphere, but that would be interesting to look at. I certainly think you're right that, surveillance and that sort of thing is much more acceptable in some circles. But perhaps that's another reason why this is proliferating in some places.
Yeah, and leave it to Rick Scott in Florida to also use this type of invasive testing to go after public unions. I'm not familiar, and I apologize. I don't know if you are. I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you know what the status is with the state of Florida also going after drug testing of public employees?
Yeah, I don't know what the status is actually, but that is something that's also been an issue both in Florida and other states, and there have also been some rulings, several of them have involved, or several of the cases that are pending have involved people receiving unemployment benefits as well, in addition to public employees. And I don't know what the status of that is in Florida, but there have been rulings finding that is similarly not acceptable, except to the extent, as we discussed earlier, that those employees are doing work that you would have a particular concern about them using drugs simultaneously, such as using heavy machinery or something where, it makes sense if you're in the medical profession and your motor skills or judgment or something might be compromised, right?
So, as it stands now, Judge Mary Scriven has rejected this, confirming earlier court's rulings. However, Florida does have the right to appeal this decision. Is the law temporarily on hold where Florida cannot test welfare recipients until that decision is appealed, or what is the status of that at this time?
Right now, the law has been struck down. What happened was, even before this, there was actually another temporary ruling in which they did put the law temporarily on hold. So it hasn't been in effect for some time now in Florida. And what this judge did was affirm that earlier ruling and say, well, it's not really called affirm, but say, yes, before I found that it was likely unconstitutional, now I've heard the arguments and I've read the briefs, and I'm telling you that it is. I'm ruling that it's absolutely unconstitutional. I'm striking it down. So that's the trial court, right? So at this point, the law has been struck down. Now, if they appeal, sometimes what people will do is ask that it be put temporarily back in place, right, pending the appeal, and they could make that argument. I don't know that they'll succeed on that argument, given all of the precedent that this favors them, and you have to have sort of a great likelihood of success on appeal. So the law hasn't been in effect, and it will continue not to be in effect. At this point, it's effectively struck down. But there is the chance that it could be revived if they win on an appeal. So.
And if this case was to move up in the court system and be appealed, is there any likelihood that this could go back in the other direction and allow Florida and other states to continue this discriminatory policy?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. One thing that looks very hopeful is that the initial ruling that I was just referencing, in which they temporarily blocked the law, was upheld by the appeals court in the same case. So there's reason. So that means that they agreed that it was likely unconstitutional, right? So they would have to turn around and say, we no longer think it's likely unconstitutional, or we no longer think that it is unconstitutional based on our hearing of the arguments. But given these sort of three decisions in one direction and other similar decisions in other states, there is a lot of reason to be hopeful. But it's not a sure thing, because as many of your listeners probably know, there are some very ideological judges on the federal appeals courts, and sometimes they do things that don't make a lot of sense. So.
Yes, and I know you have covered that extensively, which is why I asked that question.
Yeah,
Nicole, I'm really happy about this ruling. I'm really glad that you covered it. I'm originally from Florida, so this is something I've been watching for the years since they passed this law originally. Thank you for your amazing coverage on this, on everything else that you do, and of course, thank you for joining us here on Talking Left. We always love getting a chance to speak with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I've been happy to be here today.
We are very happy to have you. Nicole Flato, everybody, justice editor at thinkprogress.org. You can check it out at thinkprogress.org. You can follow her on Twitter at Nick Flato, N-I-C Flato, and we will put all those links up with the blog post after the show. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and lots more in store. Still have Justin Duckham of Talk Radio News Service coming up in a few minutes, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Everyone expected just a piece of fluff, but we wanted to do something important. You know, issue stuff.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Life is a wild ride, but even that couldn't prepare you for this. You're on your 9th wild ride, the Carnival Twist and Whirl. Your granddaughter's wishes trumping your amusement park fears. And it's here, healthy enough to feel the joy over the terror that the question hits you. How did I get here? Was it just hard work or smart choices? Like choosing Rite Aid and exclusive benefits for seniors with Rite Aid's new Wellness 65 Plus program. You get free pharmacist consultations that include medication reviews, blood pressure screenings, and immunization checklists. Wellness 65 Plus also gives you points for every purchase that earn you up to 20% off your Rite Aid purchases fast. All meant to keep you here. Now that you've actually gotten here, being the best and bravest grandma in the whole wide world. Stop by and enroll free in Wellness 65 Plus at Rite Aid today. With us, it's personal. Certain limitations apply. See your Rite Aid store or riteaid.com for details.
Hey, I'm Eric from Sam Adams. Introducing our new spring seasonal, Sam Adams Cold Snap.
Oh, that's really nice.
It's got a lot of flavor.
It says springtime.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's very smooth. Cold Snap is light and refreshing.
So this beer has 10 different ingredients. You have this really nice, complex spice and fruit flavor to it.
Wow. It's got a lot going on.
I like the name, too, Cold Snap. It's like we're kind of snapping out of that season.
Yeah, this is my kind of beer.
Crisp, refreshing, and light.
Refreshing's the best word. Delicious.
Sam Adams Cold Snap. Enjoy it while it's here.
Boston Beer Company, Boston, Mass. Save responsibly.
Perry locked himself out of his car. Should he A, call his amateur wrestler friend with fists of steel, or B, get roadside assistance from the Geico mobile app? The correct answer is B. The Geico mobile app uses GPS, so Perry can get roadside assistance quickly without saying a word. It's like telepathy. Perry's steel-fisted friend would dent up the door and break stuff. Geico's mobile app is speedy and makes it easy for Perry to get roadside assistance with a tap of his finger.
Geico. Wherever, whenever. Just a click away with our free mobile app.
I need a data backup solution for my business to replace my current tape backup device.
Do you want to spend a lot of money?
No.
Do you want to store and pay for replicated data?
No.
How about a solution that's difficult to install and use?
No.
Offshore or automated phone tree support okay?
No.
Then yes, we can help.
Barracuda Backup. End-to-end protection for physical and virtual servers, including data deduplication to significantly reduce storage requirements, and replicated cloud storage for assured recovery, and live humans to answer your calls. Try Barracuda Backup free. Go to barracuda.com/yes.
In the wake of a disaster, what one thing can you send that will help people the most? A blanket, a tent, a sandbag, a doctor. Actually, if you send a monetary donation, you send all these things. Even a small donation can make a big impact and can quickly become exactly what people affected by disaster need most.
Want to help those affected by Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines? To donate, visit philippinesrelief.adcouncil.org. That's philippinesrelief.adcouncil.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
This is the Media Matters Minute, and I'm John Kerr. After new emails and texts were released on Wednesday linking New Jersey Governor Chris Christie's administration to the bridge closure scandal, Fox News devoted less than 15 minutes to the story that day, compared to more than 2 hours each on CNN and MSNBC. CNN's New Day highlighted the discrepancy with CNN's senior media correspondent Brian Stelter.
There were so many fewer mentions of the story on Fox that it got people wondering what was going on. With 2016 on the horizon, Fox News is an important place for Republicans or for conservatives to hear about these candidates. And if they don't hear a lot about this scandal, they may not take it as seriously.
On his radio show, Rush Limbaugh seemed to confirm these suspicions.
The media, with the exception of Fox, which is probably, it's safe to say, in the Christie camp, the media is salivating now at the prospect that Christie's career is over.
For more on this and other stories, please visit MediaMatters.org.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Big thanks to Nicole Flato. Man, we've had some brilliant people on today.
I know.
Thank goodness they're so smart.
It saves us every week. Saves us and the listeners.
It does. And speaking of brilliant people, I had a funny story while I was doing show prep that I had to share with everybody because...
I mean, we prepare this?
It doesn't somewhat, a little bit, maybe print some articles.
Yeah.
I was doing some research to speak with David Bender
about the Senate races.
About the Senate races and about what the Republican strategy was for the 2014 races. And the first article I pick up, I'm going to put this picture on YouTube on our live stream for anybody who's watching that. The first article I put up is a Slate article. And who happens to be in the picture here
Mary
with
Landrieu.
Mary Landrieu, standing right behind her is Sam Sachs, who was on the show earlier, and Justin Duckham.
Side by side.
Side by side, who will be on the show in just a few minutes.
Reaching in with recorders.
Yes. And
on the scoop, and I was convinced that Nicole Flato was taking the picture.
Yes, I think she was, and David Bender was transcribing. I think.
There it is.
But I thought that was hilarious, and I have to say that's when you know you are too engrossed in the Washington bubble.
We're not in the bubble. We're just kind of around it.
Yeah.
We're not part of that.
Okay. So
and I don't want to be part of it.
No. I'm good.
Witness to it.
Yeah.
Witness to it.
Well, we were just talking with Nicole Flato about the war on the poor and how Republicans use things like drug testing of welfare recipients to demonize those in poverty. And I think it's really funny.
Funny in an odd way, not
funny in an odd way.
knee-slapping way.
About Marco Rubio's so-called war on poverty speech. Of course, he touted all the typical Republican talking points about taxes and economic opportunity and blah, 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 blah.
Wall Street Journal.
But
editorial board stuff.
Yes. But one of the new proposals he came up with, or
he was
new
fed.
in air quotes, is that marriage is the answer to poverty. I am so frustrated by this for several different ways, in several different ways. If the GOP is going to come out and tell me that people need to get married so that they are not living in poverty, why is it that the GOP doesn't support gay marriage?
Because it's the social wing. And this also, this goes back to the pre-'80s where one person in a household could support that household.
Yes.
Then it went to two people. And then they can barely. So, and there is evidence that people who get married and then they get divorced because of the settlement and the cost, and then, each person keeping a household is so much more expensive. But marriage isn't the key. What they're saying is, why don't you all get together and have 7 people in a house and share all your expenses, and maybe you can get through. The marriage thing is just a little side bonus for the social conservatives.
Well, but it also goes right back to the start of our show, where it's a way of using dog whistle politics to demonize single mothers, to demonize single parents, to demonize people.
So in other words, if you're poor, blame yourself,
right?
Because you're a single mom, etc.
It's even an effort to demonize people who maybe they both have student loans, or they owe a lot of debt from credit cards, or an underwater mortgage.
I think it ranks as one of these.
And let's just sit quietly and consider how ridiculous that statement was.
There you go.
I was wondering when you were going to break out that drop.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was for Marco.
Rubio. It is not a way to fight poverty. It's a way to continue demonizing people who weren't,
Dare I say,
racist.
When Newt Gingrich is saying it's Republican conservative social engineering.
Well said, Newt Gingrich.
Remember that?
Yes.
That when he was going after the Ryan plan, when he was running for president?
Yeah.
Right. It's conservative social engineering. Saying you should go get straight married and have 2 kids, and then you'll get the car in the garage and the chicken in every pot.
Right.
And only that way.
Yeah.
Because if you choose to be gay, that's their words, not mine, obviously. If you choose that, then it's your fault if you're poor.
That's what he's saying.
If you choose to be a single person and have a child, it's your fault. Because if it's not individual people's fault, then it's society's and our structure's fault, and then they'd have to do something about it. The reason you blame somebody else is so you don't have to do a darn thing to fix it.
Well, we've seen these type of so-called poverty efforts. I don't remember what state it was, but I remember doing the story about some state legislature enacting a poverty reform that included financial incentives for people to get married.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah. Okay, number one, if you're going to support and say, yes, 2 people living in a household obviously are going to be more financially stable than one person trying to raise a child. However, if you're going to support that, support it for everybody.
Sure.
Support it for, our LGBT brothers and sisters as well.
Oh, come on. You're going too far, according to them.
Support things like contraception that allow women to have kids when they want to plan their families. Support things like, helping people with debt. so that they can get married.
That's a huge one.
Right.
That's a huge one because more and more marriage is only for the wealthy.
It is.
It is.
So I just thought, I think it's insulting that in his so-called war on poverty speech, this is his solution. Well, a solution that still discriminates
because
against
it's a war on the war on poverty.
Right.
Period.
So I just had to rail about that. It's been bothering me all week.
Well, and rail you did.
I did. Thank you. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle, and Shano, and we're going to talk more about unemployment and this so-called war on poverty with Justin Duckham of the Talk Radio News Service next. Stick around.
Yeah, sorry about that. The show's gotten a little lowbrow.
What are you talking about? It's like the most hilarious show ever.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Can antibiotic medicines, long hailed as miracle drugs, be too much of a good thing? Yes. Two factors are at work here. First, bacteria, one of the earliest forms of life on Earth, are miracles in their own right, with a stunning ability to outsmart the antibiotic drugs through rapid evolution. Second is the rather dull inclination of us supposedly superior humans to overuse and misuse antibiotic medicines. Every time we take an antibiotic to kill some bad bacteria that is infecting our bodies, a few of the infectious germs are naturally resistant to the drug. So they survive, multiply, and become a colony of superbugs that antibiotics can't touch. Multiply this colony by the jillions of doses prescribed for everything from deadly staph infections to the common cold, and we get the, quote, antibiotic paradox. The more we use them, the less effective they become, for they're creating a spreading epidemic of immune superbugs. A big cause of this is the push by drug companies to get patients and doctors to reach for antibiotics as a cure-all. For example, millions of doses a year are prescribed for children and adults who have common colds, flu, sore throats, etc. Nearly all of these infections are caused by viruses, which cannot be cured with antibiotics. Taking an antibiotic for a cold is as useless as taking a heart drug for heartburn. The antibiotics will do nothing for your cold, but it will help establish drug-resistant superbugs in your body. That's not a smart trade-off. This is Jim Hightower saying, in fact, it's incomprehensibly stupid. Antibiotics are invaluable medicines we need for serious, life-threatening illnesses, but squandering them on sore throats has already brought us to the brink of superbugs that are resistant to everything. That's the nightmare of all nightmares.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. On the 50th anniversary of President Lyndon B. Johnson's war on poverty, the U.S. Senate is closer to extending unemployment benefits for another 3 months for long-term jobless workers. A few Republicans have joined the Democrats to vote to advance the legislation. Republicans, though, are trying to get more budget cuts in return for extending the benefits. President Obama is urging Congress to extend the jobless benefits. The official poverty rate was 19% during the Johnson administration, and it's 15% now. Right-wing conservatives fought the anti-poverty programs then and continue to oppose them now. But even with the opposition that limited the effectiveness of the war on poverty, tens of millions of people have still been lifted out of poverty. According to the Census Bureau, anti-poverty programs kept 41 million Americans out of poverty in 2012. These programs include food assistance, unemployment compensation, Social Security, and earned income tax credits. About 1,200 French workers are losing their jobs at a Goodyear plant, and they're not happy with the severance pay. They held 2 managers captive for a few hours, threatening to detain them until the company agreed to pay out big severance amounts to the workers. The unions representing the workers want the equivalent of $110,000 in severance pay, plus about $3,400 per each year worked. French police freed the managers, but the French government doesn't severely prosecute these manager abductions, seeing them as acts of desperation and not as serious felony crimes of kidnapping as they they would be treated in the U.S. After the managers were freed, workers continued their protests at the plant, including burning about 100,000 euros worth of Goodyear tires. When a plant closes in France, the entire international operation of the owner of the plant is taken into account when it comes to how the closing is handled. French workers have used the capture the boss and hold them tactic several times over the years as one of many tactics to win better compensation or working conditions. The Workers' Organizing Committee of Chicago helped Snarf sandwich shop workers protest what they say are unfair terminations of workers. The rally Wednesday at 2 Prudential Plaza in Chicago demanded the reinstatement of the fired workers and furlough payments. All of the workers at the Snarfs at 600 West Chicago were fired December 22nd. They were fired by email without notice just 3 days before Christmas. The St. Louis Show Me 15 campaign staged a protest in solidarity with the Chicago action and with the fired Chicago Snarf workers on Wednesday. Snarf is a national sandwich shop chain. The workers have filed NLRB complaints. Hundreds of supporters have called on Snarf to reinstate the workers.
This is a very sad day for 100,000 workers who are wondering what their future will hold.
We cannot afford to lose this fight. This is the end of everything that we built over 75 years.
Say if a machine breaks down, they would actually take gray duct tape to tape it up.
Listener support is vital to keep these worker voices on the radio news airwaves. Support Workers Independent News now by donating at laborradio.org. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
I started going cold turkey. Well, at least when I'm in the car.
I know I shouldn't do it, but it's so hard to stop. That's why I hide it from myself, so I won't be tempted.
I used to do it all the time. I stopped by locking it in my glove compartment.
My friend used to do it way too much. Now I turn it off when we're in the car.
My solution is simple. I just don't do it.
There are lots of ways to stop yourself and others from texting and driving. How will you stop? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you are hanging out with us, SoFlo Radio, We Act Radio, or hanging out in the chat room with us over at talkingleft.com. Joining us now is our wonderful friend and regular contributor, Justin Duckham, the Chief Washington correspondent for the Talk Radio News Service. You can check it out at talkradionewsservice.com and follow Justin on Twitter at jduckham. Justin, Happy New Year. First show you're back, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, it's great to be here as always. I certainly missed you guys. Even though I see you pretty frequently, I missed the radio versions of you because, you know, they're two different people.
Yes, we are not quite so formal in the hallways while we pass.
There we go.
Yeah. So this week, the Senate advanced legislation to extend unemployment benefits. The House decided to continue railing against Obamacare. What's the status of that? And do you think there's any chance we're going to get an extension of unemployment benefits in a reasonable amount of time?
You know, that's a good question. And as you mentioned, just to give a rundown to, your listeners, of course, what happened on, earlier in the week, we saw exactly 60 senators, and including 6 Republicans, end up voting in support of a 3-month extension of unemployment insurance as sort of an emergency measure. And then, of course, as soon as that happens, to nobody's surprise, we saw a response from John Boehner saying, this is all well and good, but I've told the White House for quite some time that any extension is going to have to require an immediate pay for or, some kind of offsets. Of course, he mentioned that without actually saying what he would accept or what he believes his caucus would, which is, sort of telling, since any time Boehner sort of sets up the goalpost, there are usually the Tea Party members within his faction who kind of force him to move it. So now it's a situation where Democrats are trying to figure out either a way to convince Republicans that these are emergency measures and that this needs to be done, which is something that, of course, Sandy Levin, who is the primary point person on this, has been trying to do. Of course, that doesn't necessarily seem successful. So as a result, we are now seeing Democrats trying to find a pay for. One of the initial ones that was put forward by Rob Portman, a Republican, was to put up a situation where those who are receiving unemployment benefits cannot also simultaneously receive disability benefits. And, Reid initially rejected that, but it looks like they're going to be going down with a toned-down version of that. I'm not necessarily sure how it's much different from the Republican proposal, that they're going to be looking at on the floor tomorrow, which is really just kind of a bad idea, especially when you consider that this is just sort of a way to sort of pick on the disabled. And, there are a lot of disability groups who are sort of targeting Reed right now who are not very happy with this, since it seems to make sense on paper, but when you take a really close look at it, it's really just kind of brutal and draconian.
Right, and these are people who have already been hit with smaller cost of living increases over the past few years, rising prices, other cuts as well. That I did not know that, and I have to say I am flabbergasted.
Justin, I have a question about that. It seems to me if you're on SS, Social Security Disability, that means you can't work. So what percentage of the population is actually can get both of those benefits simultaneously? And I know that getting Social Security Disability, I've had some friends of family members who've gotten it, and it takes 6 months, 8 months, almost a year. It seems to me that there'd be very few people that would be both on unemployment and Social Security Disability benefits.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. I actually had the percentage in front of me a little while ago, but I thought I was going to be able to memorize it. I believe it's a ridiculously small number of people who are simultaneously receiving both. I think about just 117,000, but I don't want to swear to that. But yeah, no, essentially, as you mentioned, this is for disability benefits. You really need to go through a pretty harsh process. You need to put your life under a microscope. You need to go through all of this. And also, if you receive unemployment benefits, that also means that you were working long enough to be able to be eligible for it. So just because you're suddenly disabled doesn't mean that you did not put the money into that system, that you did not contribute to that, and that you did not put yourself into a situation where you would be absolutely fully eligible for it. So It really is just cruel, and it's sort of a way to appeal to people, and it kind of plays into the idea of a lazy person who doesn't go to work because he's on disability, or a Ronald Reagan-esque welfare queen trying to unlock the system. But at the end of the day, these aren't huge benefits that we're talking about. This is about $1,500 for each, or maybe a little bit less. Actually, almost sure a little bit less for each month.
And no matter how small the population is, each one of those individuals will be impacted immensely. So, I'm not trying to belittle. It just seems like the benefit would, in terms of the overall governmental savings, would be so small it would not be worth doing it to those people.
Exactly, and it's also worth noting, unemployment insurance, disability benefits aren't exactly expected to be a substitution for wages. This is considered to be a supplement to whatever savings you may already have or what you have already earned, and it's specifically designed to try to ease somebody back into the workforce once they've had something that's really taken them out. So it really the reason why it's getting so much traction, it seems to be, is just a general level of ignorance over what these people go through, and just a lack of consideration for the fact that these are people who probably have legitimate excuses, since there is a high level of regulation that goes in with this, and that these are people who have also paid into these benefits for unemployment insurance by being taxpayers or being members of the job force for so long, and it just seems cruel to deny it from them just because they happen to be getting another form of government assistance.
Yeah, it's absolutely cruel. Just to remind everybody, we're speaking with Justin Duckham of the Talk Radio News Service. You can check it out at talkradionewsservice.com, and you can follow Justin on Twitter at jduckham. To answer part of your question, Shane, there are different percentages of disability. Like, you can be 100% disabled and get 100% of disability benefits, and then you probably wouldn't also qualify for unemployment, but you can also have a partial disability if, say, you can work part-time. Just something I know from working in the insurance industry.
So if you're only getting partial disability and then you're only working part-time, so you're getting a very small unemployment check, you add those together and it just ends up being
even less.
Right.
Yeah.
So it just seems like a ridiculously cruel thing that stigmatizes and actually serves no purpose whatsoever.
Absolutely. Justin, I'm just curious of the political impact of this, and why I'm having a hard time not cursing right now, I have to say, why Democrats would go along with this, because public support, not only for unemployment benefits and for restoring long-term benefits, the vast majority of the public wants those benefits restored. Why would Democrats even play this game of that we need to offset benefits with more austerity? Why wouldn't they back Republicans into a corner? Will they ever learn that they do have power when it comes to issues like this?
I think because they realize that time really is of the essence here. Of course, unemployment insurance expired on December 28th, and although it'd be nice to take a huge principled stand and try to force Republicans into a corner and force them into accepting it, we, have no guarantee that they would actually listen to reason. This is the people who have, contributed to the government shutdown in the past. These are people who have, really taken a lot of people to the edge of the brink and have, been willing to cross it many times, especially when it comes to the, faith and credit of, the U.S. paying back its bills and whatnot. And so, although it would be, logical to presume that the amount of people suffering in the U.S. or within their own districts, would be enough to force their hand on it, there's no guarantee. And there really is sort of just an acceptance that this is the game that Republicans are going to play. They don't really seem to be willing to give the ball back, so you kind of have to play on their terms. And as a result, we end up, trying to see, we end up seeing some pretty interesting ways that Democrats are trying to cope with that. Of course, in addition to the, disability double-dipping move that I pointed out, we're also seeing some plans to dip into Social Security or Medicare payments for doctors and whatnot in 2024 by extending the sequester by an additional year for mandatory spending. So it's really just kind of interesting to see how this stuff plays out. And it looks like, Republicans aren't going to be backing down, and it's probably not going to be the one thing they're going to demand, especially because every time we've seen a deal that sort of looks good on paper, that looks like it's going to be moving forward, we end up seeing the usual kind of BS where it's suddenly not good enough.
It's amazing. It's so difficult to negotiate with sociopaths. Essentially what it comes down to. Democrats care that time is short and that people have been without unemployment benefits for 2 weeks and that they can't pay their bills and they can't eat. And Republicans, they're taking the principled stand. They're saying, we're going to have the offsets, and we don't care. We just don't care. How do you negotiate with that? I mean, that's a rhetorical question, but you can't. So.
No, that's a very good question. That's why, of course, there's sort of a sense with a lot of members of Congress that we're probably not going to get anything done this year until the midterm elections, and until things really shift their ground. And even then, there's of course no guarantee that we're going to see a more saner government. And it's just more of the same stuff, and it is absolutely disheartening.
Well, and Justin, as frustrating as that conversation was, just to lighten the tone slightly, I had to laugh this week that Marco Rubio had the audacity to come out and talk about the war on poverty being a failure and offer Republican solutions. Did that crack you up as well, especially the fact that he made sure to have the water bottle nice and close by during this speech?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's not laughable, I guess. So what's really so sad is he had just voted against the extension of unemployment insurance in the Senate just days before he gave that high-profile speech. And of course, what he came forward with was, frankly, not anything that was necessarily very new. I guess the main sort of intellectual meat in that was the idea of giving poverty programs to states and giving them more flexibility, which is, fine. That's interesting. That's a point that you can make. But, of course, he shrouded it in a lot of Republican I'm running for President 2016 language, including the emphasis that he placed on marriage being a key way to lift people out of poverty. Of course, all of that stuff, which is really just a little bit of mumbo-jumbo and doesn't take into account the fact that maybe the data, of course, is just skewed because people who are married or in economic situations where that makes sense, are more likely to get married and whatnot. And it was one of the typical kind of Marco Rubio speeches. It didn't really add much to the conversation, but it really just shows that, there are, subtle races underway. And, of course, we saw, Paul Ryan, who is sort of the austerity master, who is somebody who has certainly had a negative effect on a lot of the disenfranchised in this country, coming out and giving a pretty similar anti-poverty speech. And it looks like that's going to be their new buzzword, to harp heavily on poverty while simultaneously carrying out a legislative agenda that does nothing at all to solve it.
Yeah.
Quick question, Justin. You said one of Marco Rubio's ideas, and it's not a new one, is to give these anti-poverty programs to the states. Medicaid currently administered by states. Much of TANF is administered by states. These are block grants that are given. Other than food stamps, aren't most of these anti-poverty programs already at the state level?
That is a very good point. That's certainly what it looks like. And so I'm not necessarily sure what he's trying to, he's not necessarily reinventing the wheel with this approach. He said that from his experience in the Florida legislature, he would have, of course, had a much greater ability to try to tend to his constituents and whatnot, which is sort of a little interesting comment that he made. And I don't really see anything new coming out of this, and it doesn't look like anyone's necessarily taking it seriously, because this, of course, with every sort of move that Marco Rubio does, be it supporting immigration reform and then suddenly ditching it, or statements like these really just smack of blatant politics.
Yeah, absolutely. It will be something to watch. If it wasn't so painful and it didn't hurt so many people, it would be laughable to see them talking about poverty. But at least the conversation has shifted into a direction where we are talking about poverty. Justin, thank you so much for joining us. We missed you while you were gone. Happy belated birthday. Happy New Year.
Sure.
And hopefully we'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you. See you guys later. Justin
Duckham, everybody, Chief Washington Correspondent of the Talk Radio News Service, and our wonderful friend and brilliant journalist. We will be back here on Talking Left with me, Danielle, and Shano. Just a few more minutes in store, so don't go anywhere.
I'm David Schuster, and you're listening to my favorite show other than my own, Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Hey, Bob, how's business? Is the new website helping?
Not good. I can't figure out how to get the website finished. How did you do it?
Easy. I called Web.com. They built my website for free.
Wow, free? Really? Web.com?
Yep, and in just 7 days. Then they promoted it on all the search engines.
Like Google, Yahoo, and Bing?
Exactly. And Web.com has helped grow my business so much, I had to bring on new staff.
Hey, if Web.com did it for you, they're perfect for me.
Web.com can build your website for free in as little as 7 days. If after 30 days you're happy with your new website, we'll continue to provide promotion, hosting, support, and maintenance, all for just one low monthly fee. If not, cancel and pay nothing. Call now. 855-747-SITE. 855-747-SITE. 855-747-7483. Or go to web.com/radio. There is no upfront charge for building the website, after which the ongoing fee applies. Rights to the website are relinquished upon cancellation unless otherwise purchased.
If you're a homeowner who's faithfully made your mortgage payments, you deserve thanks for doing the right thing. And I'd like to tell you about a powerful financial tool that rewards your commitment. Hi, I'm Jay Farner, president of Quicken Loans. And the tool that I'm talking about is the Home Affordable Refinance Program, or HARP. HARP is designed to help you lower your mortgage payments. It's for homeowners who are current on their mortgage payments, but due to the housing market may have little or no equity left in their home. And even if you were unable to get a HARP loan in the past, new guidelines mean that now you may be eligible. More than 2.5 million homeowners have already taken advantage of HARP and are saving an average of $250 a month. If you're one of the millions yet to take advantage, call us today at 800-QUICKEN. To learn more, call Quicken Loans today at 800-QUICKEN or go to QuickenLoans.com. That number again is 800-QUICKEN.
Important terms and conditions apply. Call us for cost information. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Hiya, Fred.
Hello, Eddie.
Been to Parts Plus again, I see.
Yeah, if it's any business of yours.
I was just curious.
I was getting a new pair of wiper blades and some floor mats, if that's okay with you.
I don't get no what over it. It's just we've been neighbors so long, I'm used to seeing those Parts Plus bags and boxes.
What, you keeping track or something?
No, just being neighborly.
Yeah, well, Parts Plus. Keep looking and you'll keep seeing them. Nosy neighbor.
For the location nearest you, go to PartsPlus.com.
Hiya, Hi, Fred.
Hello, Eddie.
Parts Plus get you that part you were waiting on?
Yeah, called this morning.
Well, that was fast. Come on, I'll give you a lift to go pick it up.
Well, sure. Just let me go get my hat.
Hat? Well, where'd you get that hat?
What, are you the fashion police now?
You look like an old man in a hat.
Well, there's a reason for that.
You wearing that to Parts Plus?
Yeah, maybe it'll keep anybody from recognizing me. Sitting here next to you.
For the location nearest you, go to partsplus.com.
Filter-free radio.
Filter-free radio.
Filter-free radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean.
With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
But I just don't subscribe to the common memes, and I don't subscribe to either political parties anymore because they don't represent us. They represent, well, their own interest, obviously, and furthering their own interests, and furthering the interest of wealthy financiers who obviously pay for them to get elected, and that's who they serve. So what do you do in this situation where obviously changing the players doesn't change the game? It's like you can vote, but don't spend more than 5 minutes on it. Then the time it takes to go to the polls and pull the lever and then move on, and then get back out in the streets and protest with your signs and raise awareness and educate people.
Filter-free radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
And that comes from reading. I mean, really, you have to start reading alternative critical thinkers, the Noam Chomskys of the world, the late Howard Zinn, people who document these things. Activism is what brings about change, and change comes from physically being in the streets. The biggest lie is that I'm an internet activist. Well, there's no such thing. You're either an activist or you're not, but there is no internet activist. It's like, well, that means you don't get out of the house, which means you don't really accomplish anything. You know, you're not organizing, you're not getting people together in the streets, you're not actually pushing for a real change that you want to see. You're just more talking about it online, which is the same as a conference call.
Filterfreeradio.com.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you are checking us out, hanging out in the chat room over at Talking Left, listening on SoFlo Radio, or of course We Act Radio, 1480 AM in Washington, D.C. And follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We'd love to hang out with you.
We'll follow you back. We swear.
Yes,
yeah.
we will.
Without a doubt.
Yes. We just spoke with Justin Duckham, the chief Washington correspondent for Talk Radio News Service. I have to say, I am flabbergasted that Republicans would go after those on disability.
Yeah.
Of all
shocked.
The people you could go after. I mean...
I'm shocked.
Yeah, I'm not. And I understand most of the predictions are a very gloomy Congress, given the fact that last year wasn't an election year and they did nothing. But I would imagine that, yes, there'll be an inordinate amount of gridlock. But I think once the primary windows close, in terms of whether or not someone can get into the race against you, for example, Lindsey Graham is facing a primary challenge. Some established, not Tom Coburn, but guy down in Texas. I can't remember his name.
John
Cornyn. You know, people who are staunch conservatives facing Tea Party challenges, once the deadline passes, they might free them up a little bit to be not so crazy. And on top of it, this is the thing we've been talking about a lot, that is our firm belief that the Voting Rights Act case is the reason we're not getting immigration reform. And mostly because they figure that if they can close down the polls, they don't have to worry about minority votes.
Right.
But if we watch in these laws that are going into effect, there are injunctions filed against them that they aren't going to go into effect this next election. Watch for the Congress, very close to September, October, all of a sudden say, it'd be a really good idea to do some immigration reform right about now, hoping to win over that population that they hoped to exclude from the polls. And that's only if the courts and the Justice Department is successful in terms of stopping these types of laws. So, yeah, it'll be gridlock, but there might be some things to get done because people are out and they want things done.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see if that's too little too late at that point.
Hey, if we can get some progress, despite the political leanings, I'm all for progress, no matter what.
Yeah,
no matter what the reason.
Of course, the big story this week was Chris Christie and Bridgegate.
Yeah, which we covered in Just with David, but it's the shiny objects, so you don't pay attention.
Exactly. But as we usually do a funny story here in this segment of the show, I thought it would be great to do to cover some of the best tweets during Chris Christie's nearly 2-hour press conference.
I thought he was going for like a Hugo Chavez or remember the long speeches that they complain that some communist leaders give.
Right. There is a collection of these over at rawstory.com, so I'm not going to read all of them by any means, but you should go and check them out. They're hilarious. But some of my favorites, speaking on how long the press conference was, by Miles Kahn, What Bill is Christie Filibustering? By Dave Weigel. Did Christie accidentally fire the staffer who told him to end the press conference? There are quite a few hilarious ones. Peter Beinart, the really remarkable moment when Cory Booker began rowing stranded commuters across the Hudson. Whereas there was one from Ben... Oh, goodness, there's so many here. Ben Jacobs, at Ben Jacobs, at Ben C. Jacobs. If it's a legitimate traffic study, the female body finds a way to shut that whole thing down. Yes. Legitimate. If it's a legitimate traffic study.
Yeah.
There are quite a few of hilarious ones over here. I cannot get through all of them. Liz Whitstead, Steve Martin, at Steve Martin to go. Somebody else tweeted, Governor throws aide under bus. Steve Martin tweeted back, however, bus stalled in traffic.
Took 4 hours to run over.
Yeah. So just, hey, if we have to talk about a nonsense story like Chris Christie, it's not nonsense to New Jersey voters. It's not nonsense to people who were stranded in that traffic, who were, God forbid, lost wages in hourly jobs.
There's a class action lawsuit filed for people who lost wages, who lost days of work. I mean, there is a real economic impact. A woman died. I understand the family said, it was her time. They're not going to be suing over that. But this seriously affected individuals' lives. And as we were talking about right after with Justin or right after, you can't debate and you can't negotiate with sociopaths. It's hard to reason with them as well. And they just don't think of that connection. It's, either it's about a state senator or it's about a mayor. It's not about these individual people. And then even in the emails where they said, oh, I feel bad for them. Oh, well, no, they're able to write them off, marginalize, say, oh, no, they're Democratic voters.
Right.
It's yeah. Well, for that purpose, I think it's an important story to shed some light on the political mind of a conservative in retribution and just not giving a crud.
Yes, but we do have some other big issues like the disability unemployment thing.
But understand but to understand the mentality of the people you're negotiating with to get those things done.
Right.
That they don't care.
And the fact that Congress got closer to fast tracking the TPP while everybody else was talking about Chris Christie.
Right.
Just things we need to remember.
Indeed.
I want to thank everybody, our great, amazing guests during the show. David Bender of Progressive Voices, Sam Sachs of RT, Nicole Flato, Think Progress Justice, and of course, our weekly segment with Justin Duckham of Talk Radio News Service. Big thanks to Nicole Sandler of Radio or Not, everybody over at We Act Radio, Alex Lawson, Kimon Freeman, Pete Callahan, Cliff Schechter, of course, George Rodriguez of SoFlo Radio, Rocky Mountain Mike for our amazing intro music, Boca for our voicing, and to everybody listening, we wouldn't be here without you. We'll see you guys next week.